Alright guys, so welcome back. So in the previous part, we were able to bring our Kanban board to life. We implemented drag and drop functionalities and we were able to create tags and display it automatically on our Kanban board with our page reloads. But part 7, our board is going to get a serious upgrade. So now we can edit any tags with our page reload. It is instant, clean, and fast. Also, project permission is going to be locked. Only project owners can delete or update projects. This is part 7 and it's actually packed with real-time updates, back phases, and clean code. So if you want to see more features, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and I'm just going to see you in the next video. All right, guys, so welcome back. So if you followed part 6, you're going to realize that in part 6, we actually ended part 6 by being able to create a task on the Kanban board and then displaying the task on the Kanban board. We also implement the ability to drag and drop, and if you even refresh the page, this task is going to stay where you actually left it. But what we also did was, being able to create this task and then displaying it automatically on the Kanban board. So let's say the task that I want to create at this point is maybe create a front end and for maybe Swift app. So let's say this is our task. We click on that and it actually creates a task on the Kanban board over here. We can move it around. If we even refresh the page, it's still going to stay where we left it. That is the beauty about the whole thing. It doesn't need to refresh the page. But then one thing we didn't do is to have the ability to maybe click on this button here to bring up a modal. This modal actually has to be pre-populated with the details of the tag so that we can update it. For now, we only have the title, but if you take a closer look at the model of the tags, we have a lot of things to do. Like we need to add a description, we need to add a start date, end date. We should even have the ability to assign a user to the task. These are the things that we have not done and we need to do right now. So I'm just going to bring up my editor over here, and I want to also tell you that you don't have to forget to run your Django server. So I have my Django server running over here, and then I actually have 5 servers running, and then the next one is also my Redis server. So the Redis server is also running so that I could actually run some tasks in the background. And we have salary worker also running. You see here it has actually succeeded in creating some tasks and all that. And then we have the serially beat, that is the scheduled task. And then the last one is just the terminal for creating, committing Git, my project into Git. So if I should run Git branch like this, you're gonna realize that I am currently on the branch 7, part 7 over here. That is what we are working on right now. So this is what I have done, and you should also probably do the same thing, especially with running these servers. All right, so at this point, what we want to do is to have the ability to click something on the dashboard over here or on the Kanban board over here. And once we click that particular thing, we want to have the ability to open a modal, and this modal is going to tell us, is going to have a form in it, and inside that form we're going to have the details of that particular task on that. So we need to target an element on the page over here, and the element we are going to be targeting is just going to be this pencil icon over here. So to do that, I'm just going to bring up my text editor. I'm also going to be zooming out a bit so that you can see clearly. And then I'm just going to go into the Kanban board, the project, and then look for templates. Inside the template, I'm just going to go into the Kanban board over here. All right. So this is the page, our Kanban board HTML. I'm going to scroll down to where we have our script, and towards the end over here, let me see. Towards the end, at this point, I'm just going to make a comment. And the comment that I'm going to make is like open a modal, open a modal. Okay, so this is what we want to do. So let's have a little bit of a plan. First, we need to select an element, or we need to target an element we want to click on. So first, let me make a comment. First is just going to be target and elements. Okay, so we need to get a target, something that we will click on it. And then once we click on it, we need to loop through. So the next thing is just going to be looping through those elements that we have targeted, because it's just going to be in a list like that. And from there, we need to open the modal. So after we have looped through, when we click on a single element, we need to open a modal and then show the details of that. So let's start by first of all targeting an element on the page. So let me bring you back here. This is what we want to target, and we can actually inspect the element to see which the class of that particular element. So let's scroll and we are going to see fa-pen over here. This is it. That is the icon, pencil icon. So this is just going to run through all the board. We have the backlog to do in progress, and we also have one for the completed, but the class is just going to be the same for all. So this is what we want to target. So I'm just going to copy that, scroll down to the bottom where we are actually targeting it. And once I get to that part, I'm just going to define a variable. So this variable, let me do const, and the name I want to give it to is the edit icons like this, because it's a list of icons we are going to target. And the way we are going to select is just going to be document and we're going to do query selector, or this one right here. And then what we want to do is to pass the class of that, but don't forget to bring this period over here. Okay, so from there, I'm just going to bring this, and now we go to the second point where we loop through. So in fact, if I should console log, it's just going to give us the list of the elements we have targeted over there. But what we need to do is, obviously, we are going to click on a single one of them at a time, and we need to get the particular one that is clicked. So to do that, you're going to pick our variable, which is the edit icons like this, and then we're going to do dot for each. And now what we want to do is to assign a single name to the one that is clicked, because we are clicking on one at a time. And after that, we want to run this function. We want to run a function. Okay, so what we want to do is to run a function. Okay, so let me do this real quick. Okay, so at this point, we have now had access to the icon. So I can now prevent the default behavior of that particular icon when it is clicked. So I can do icon, because this is the icon we are targeting over here. Dot, and we're going to do add event listener. So first of all, let's even add an event listener to it. So the event listener we want to add event listener like this. And then the event listener we want to add is just going to be the click event. And so you're going to do the click event. That is what we are actually trying to add. And from here, we're going to run a function. So the function we're going to run, we are actually passing events to it. And after we have passed the event, we can now prevent the default behavior. So I'm going to do event dot, and then we're going to do prevent default behavior, so that when the button is clicked, it's just going to prevent the default behavior, because we really don't want the page to be reloaded when the button is actually clicked. And now that we have had this, the next thing I want us to do is to be able to open the modal. But before we even go ahead and open the modal, we also want to be able to console log, or maybe alert the ID of the tax to see whether we are even grabbing the correct tax. So what I want to do is to make a comment, get task ID like this. Okay, so we want to get a tax ID. And the way we are going to get a tax ID, let me even come up here and then define another variable. So that variable, I'm just going to do let and say current, and I'm going to call it task ID like this. This is how I want to call it. And I'm going to set that one to null over here. So after I have done this, I can use this variable down in my loop over here. So what I want to do is to say this current variable is just going to be equal to, and I'm going to do this. So it's actually going to refer to the icon that has been clicked. And from there, we want to have the closest, or get the closest parent the closest parent or container that actually contains the pencil icon. So when you come here, this is a container, and this particular container has a class. Within the container, we have this pencil icon. So when we click on this one, we are going to get the closest parent. So the closest parent is just going to have a class. So I'm going to scroll up inside our code where we have the pencil icon. Let me scroll up a bit, and then we are just going to get the one with the task, a class called task card. So I'm just going to copy this one over here and then scroll down to where we are using it. And then, okay, so this place. So this dot, I'm just going to do closest. And then once we do this, I'm just going to pass the class that we are going to target. So the class is just going to be dot, and I'm just going to put that particular class we want. And then we are going to get the data attribute. So that is going to be data set dot. Then I'm just going to pass the class, this particular task ID over here. So we have a data attribute, and we want to grab the task ID, and we are assigning it to the current task. So once we do this, the next thing we're going to do is to alert or console log to see if we are getting the correct tax ID or we are getting the tax ID at all. So I'm just going to do alert, and I'm just going to alert the current tax like this. All right, but before we even go ahead and then alert this tax ID, we need to get rid of this tax, this card. I don't know how it came, but it was a typo over here. So it's a task card data set, then we get a tax ID and then put it in this variable. So this is actually going to get us the tax ID, and we are going to store it in this variable, and then now we can alert it. So I'm just going to save it, go back to our page, refresh, and after refreshing, in case or if we did everything right, we should be able to click on this and it should alert the task ID. So now our app is actually being able to recognize or detect the tax, click on these icons, and then it's actually also giving us the correct tax ID. So this tax ID is something that we are going to pass to our backend to query for a particular tax. Okay, so the purpose of this is to just see that you're being able to get a tax, but I'm just gonna comment it out real quick. Then the next thing we're gonna do at this point, let me close this gap a bit, is to open a model over here. But then the model that we want to open is coming from our template. So I'm just going to go into the template. Inside the template, which I have also left a link in the description, we have a folder called UI. Inside the UI, we have a file called modals.html. All right, so this is where all the modals of the admin template we are using is. So when you come here, you're going to see various types of modal over here. So the first is just going to be the default modal. You click on it and it's actually going to open the modal for you. We have all these ones. You can just test them and pick the one that is good for you. All these ones are there. We have the success. It also looks nice, but what we're going to be going for is just going to be the launch modal default. So this is it. That is what I'm targeting. So I'm going to copy this, or even come to our editor, and inside the editor, I'm just going to go, this is the template folder. I'm just going to click on it and then go to UI and then modals. And then I'm gonna come back to it. It says launch default modal. So I'm gonna search for it just to be quick. So I'm gonna do launch default modal. So we have launch default modal over here. And how many instances of it we have? We have it over here. So looking at it, I'm just gonna have to trace the modal ID or the target ID over here. So let me target it, and then so that I can go and then copy the code for that particular one. So I'm gonna hit on it, and it brings me back to where it is being used. So this is the opening div and then the closing div over here. I'm gonna copy, let me collapse it like this, and then copy everything over here and then bring it back to our app. So I'm gonna scroll to the top over here outside of our JavaScript. So I'm gonna go down, and where we are actually closing the block, I can just put it over here. But just to make our code more modular, I'm just gonna go into task, because it's a task that we want to update. So I'm gonna go to task app, go to templates, and I'm gonna go into the task over here, go into, we don't have templates, so I'm gonna create a folder called template inside of the task. So I'm gonna do template, and then inside the templates, I'm just gonna create a file and I'm gonna call it task update modal, something like that. So when I say task underscore updates, I just want to be making it more descriptive. Updates underscore modal dot html, because it's still an html file, and I'm just gonna paste it over here. Now we have the task modal ID. That is what we want to target, but I have a different name I want to give to it. I'm just gonna call it task update modal. So I'm gonna do task update modal. So this is more descriptive to me over here. So now that we have done this, I can just close this modal. We don't need it, but we are going to use the code inside of our own project. So I'm also going to save this one over here and then come to our Kanban board. Now we need to include it on the page. What it's basically going to do is to copy this code and then paste it over here during the runtime, but then the code is somewhere we are just including. So I'm going to do include, and what we want to include is just going to be, it's just going to be in the task, and we have task update. So we have the task underscore update underscore modal dot html, like this. Let me confirm the name again, task update. So I'm gonna bring this one like this, task update modal, and that is inside of the task. You see, I had this one wrong, so when I do task like this, so that is how it's going to be. I think I should even create another folder over here and call it task like this, and then I'm just gonna move this one inside of the folder like this, and I'm gonna confirm it like that. So right after that, I can just save changes. All right, so I think everything is good to go. I'm gonna scroll down to where we are calling the model. So here is where we want to open the model. We do a comment like open model. Now, okay, we now want to have the ability to open the model, and the way we are going to open the model is just going to be simple. The version of AdminLTE we are using, the template we are using, is using Bootstrap 4. So this is a way to do it using Bootstrap 4, and suppose we're using another version like version 5, we are going to do it in a different way. But because you are using the Bootstrap version 4 for the template, we are going to rely on jQuery. Let me use the $ over here, and then I'm just gonna bring my bracket like this, and then in a single quote I want to target. So I'm just gonna use the hash or the pound sign and then the name of the model. So we come to where we give the model the name. I'm just gonna copy it over here and then come to this part, and I'm just gonna paste it over there. And then the next thing we want to do is dot, then we're gonna do dot model. So modal, and I'm also going to put this one inside here and then do show. So this is actually going to show or open the model for us. So let me save changes, come back to our board over here, refresh the page. All right, so it's now saying the template does not exist. So let's look at it. All right, so I think the issue we have is the template. It's supposed to be plural. It's supposed to be template. So let me edit and then add s to it like this, and then confirm that one over here. And now that we have done that, I'm gonna go to the page, refresh, and then I'm gonna click on this pencil icon, and it's actually giving us default modal over here. That's what we want. But then you're going to realize that the modal does not have a body. It says one fine body over here, and that is because inside the modal we have this paragraph saying one fine body. So we need to make changes to this particular modal. And the first thing I want to do is to change the title over here, and I'm just going to make it update tasks. You can make it anything you want. It only has to be descriptive. And then we also need to give it a body over here. So the body we want to give is just going to be our form. And the form, I'm just going to go into task over here. And inside the tags app, I want to create a forms.py. So I'm gonna do right click over here, and then not even right click. I'm just gonna click and then create a file forms.py over here. So inside the forms.py, we have to import the following. First is to import forms itself. So we say from Django dot and not dot from Django, we want to import and we are going to import forms. So after we have imported forms, I also need to make a couple of imports. The next thing I also want to import is just going to be the date picker. So I'm going to do from tempos underscore dominos underscore dominos dot widgets like this. We're gonna import, and what we are importing is just gonna be the date picker like this. So this is a third-party package we installed earlier on. So in case you didn't watch that one, don't forget to have a look at it. It was actually simple to do. And then after we have imported this, the next we want to also import is just going to be the model we want to make the query from. That is going to be the tags app. So it's going to do from dot models import, and we are going to import task like this. After we have imported this, we are also going to be dealing with the status and then the priority for the task. So if you go to project, let's go into our project, go into our utils. We have statuses like status choices and then the priority choices. We also need to import them over here. So I'm just going to do from projects just dots, and that is just going to be the utils file we want to go into. We want to import, and what we want to import at this point is just going to be the status choices and also the priority choices. So after we have imported these things, let me collapse this side a bit so that we can see clearly. Okay, so now we want to define our task form. So that is just going to be a class in Django or Python, and just going to give it a name, task updates form like this. That is the name I want to give it. And this is actually going to be inheriting from the forms.model form. So you say forms.model forms like this. Let me do model form like this. Model form. Okay, so after we have done this, let's override the class method. So I'm gonna do class, and the name is meta. So we need to override this. And what we're gonna do is to set the model. So the model is the model, and the model is just gonna be the app or the database or the model we want to query from. In this case, it's just gonna be the task. That's why we have imported task over here. And from there, we also need to define the fields we want to show on the model or inside the field. So the fields is just going to be a list of fields we want to set. So the first field we want to set is just going to be the name of the task. And the next one is also going to be the description of the task. So it's a description like this. And then the next one also is going to be the priority. So we have priority. So priority, and we also have the start date and then the due date. So we want to also show the start date. So we say start underscore dates, and the last one I want to display is going to be the due underscore date like that. So these are the fields we want to show, and after we have done this, we can just copy the name of this file, this form, and come back into our view for the tags or the Kanban board. So I'm going to scroll to where we have the Kanban board view. Scroll down to Kanban board. So I'm going to be looking for Kanban board. And then the next context we want to add is just going to be the form. So I'm just going to do context like this. So we have the context, and then we need to now pass a form. So the name we are going to access on our front end is just going to be a form. And then we also want to set it like this. So I'm just going to do this tax update form like that. And we need to import it because it's not imported. I'm going to go to the very top and then do from dot forms, not dot forms, from task dot forms, we need to import, and now you're going to import task update form, so the system detects it automatically. And now that we have done this, what we're going to do is to save changes to all the files. And now I can just come back to my tax update form over here, and where it is actually saying one fine body, I'm just gonna comment it out and then include our form over here. So this is how to do it, form like this. I'm gonna save changes, and after I have saved changes, I'm gonna come back here, refresh the page. All right, so it looks like we had an error. So I'm gonna go to my terminal and then look at what. So it says the unknown field name. So let's check, and it's supposed to be name, not names. And we can just confirm that. I'm gonna go to task, and then we go to task model. So task model, and we have name, not names. So let's save changes again, check to see if the server is running, and let me even quit it, clear, and then run the server again. I'm also going to zoom out a bit, and now the server is running. I just want to refresh, and now everything is working. So I'm going to click on this, and now we are seeing the forms, the fields that we actually introduced into the form. So we have the name, the description, the priority, start date, end date, and these are not looking nice. So something that we have to overwrite quickly. All right, so let's go back to our forms and do some few modification. The first thing we want to do is to override some of this. So the first one I'm just going to do is to override the description. So description is here. I'm going to copy the name description, come here, paste it, and this is how we override it. So description is just going to be forms dot, and we are just going to make it a car field like that. Afterwards, we need to pass in the widgets, and then the widgets, we're going to do forms.text area. So forms.text area like this. So this text area, we can pass couple of attributes. So the attribute is just going to be in the form of dictionary, Python dictionary. So I'm going to do attrs, and first is to give it the number of rows we want to show. So if you look at it over here, the number of rows is showing is quite huge. It's occupying so much space. So we're gonna come here and then do rows like this. So the rows, we want to give it an integer, and what we are going to give is just going to be 3. So we want to display only 3 rows over here. And from there, we also want to do a placeholder. So placeholder like this. So this is just going to be a text we want to show people before they even type in it. So that is going to be a string, and the string is going to be a string. So I'm just going to do describe your task here, and I'm just going to bring this double dot like that, triple dot or something like that. Perfect. We also want to ensure that it is required. That means they cannot skip it. They have to fill the description. So we say required, and that is just going to be a boolean of either true or false. But in this case, I don't think description is much needed. So I'm just going to do it false for now. So let's say false. But you can, depending on what you're doing, you can make it either true or false just to enforce that particular thing. So I'm just going to save, come back here, and when I refresh, this one should be reduced. It should be shrinked. So I'm just going to refresh, click on it, and we have it over here. All right, so let's go ahead and then modify some of these things. The next thing is also going to be the start date. Looking at the start date, this is how it's showing, much like just a test field, and you can type in. We don't want it to be like that. And for that matter, we actually imported the Tempus Dominus package. All right, so let me come down over here, and I'm also going to copy the start date and then override the start date over here. So the start date is just going to be equal to forms dot date time field like this, and this one over here. And now we need to pass in a couple of arguments. So the first is just going to be widget. And then the widget is just going to be the date picker we have imported at the top here from this particular package. And we pass in a couple of arguments for that. And the attributes is just going to be equal to. So we need to pass in the dictionary now. So the first attribute is just going to be append. We need to give it the icon for a calendar. So first it's just going to be append, and what we're going to be appending is just going to be this particular class, which is fa dash calendar like this. So that is the first one, and we also need to pass the icon. So we have icon underscore toggle, go like this, and that is going to be true. So we want to be able to toggle it, so it's a boolean like this. Okay, so after we have had this, I think that is good for us to be able to do that. So let me save changes, come back, and then I'm gonna refresh. We don't have any errors, but now this is what you're seeing. We are now using the template, so we can just set the date like this. You can just click, and then it's actually going to show us this particular one. So once that one is done, I can just copy it over here, copy it, and then paste it for the due date. So it's just gonna be due underscore date like this, and that is also going to fix that particular one over there. So we have the name, the description, the priority, and all of that over there. Okay, so let me save changes, refresh to see what we have over here. So we click, and then we are seeing the start date, and then the due date. Perfect. So with these ones, I'm also going to make sure that the name and then the priority, especially with the priority, let's take a look at the priority. The priority is looking very small. All right, but before we even go ahead and then fix the issue with the priority, let's first of all import this particular package, the Django crispy form. So I'm just going to load the crispy form on our page like this. But before we even load the crispy form, we can render the form as a normal form. We can also render it as, and then P, that is going to render it as a paragraph. Let's refresh the page, click on it, and this is what it looks when we render it as a paragraph. Let me take out the paragraph so that you can see the difference. So refresh, click, and this is how it's looking versus when we render it as a paragraph. But this is not how I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to make sure that I load the Django crispy form. So I'm going to do load, and not static, but crispy underscore forms underscore tags like this. So this is going to load the Django crispy form for us. And once we do that, we can now do type like this, and then we're gonna do crispy like that. So I'm gonna save changes, come here, and I'm gonna refresh the page like this. I'm gonna click on it, and it's looking very nice. Now the description, the name has actually changed because we use the crispy form. It actually has extended it. It's looking nice, but the priority is not being changed. And the way we are going to fix the priority, I'm gonna go into the forms, and then we need to override the priority over here. So I'm gonna come down and do priority like this, and that is just gonna be forms dot, and that is gonna be a choice field. So we have the choice field like that, and inside the choice field we need to pass the choices. So we have the choices, and the choices is just gonna be the priority choices. I'm gonna do priority choices, which is what we have in the model over here. So let's see, priority choices is just gonna be over here. So priority choices, and then the next thing we also want to pass is the widget. So widget, let's override that one, and it's just gonna be forms.select like this. Okay, so this is also going to be accepting the attribute. So we do attribute like this, and let's pass the class. So the class we want to pass first is just gonna be class, and the class we want to pass is just gonna be form dash control, so that it stretches all the way. So you do form dash control like this, control. That is what we want to pass, and we also want to make sure that the required is also true. So required. So we want to make sure that people are able to fill this. It's not left blank. So that is going to be equal to true like this. And I think I can save changes now. Come back here, click, and we have the priority not being affected. Let me refresh the page to see. Click, and now priority is actually working. So we can now have the priority over here, low, medium, high. So this is all that we need to do to be able to bring up the model like this, so that in the next video we are just going to be working on how we can pre-populate all these details and then save the changes. So guys, I'm just going to see you in the next video. Bye for now. All right guys, so welcome back. So let's take a look at this. Now we can click on this and we are now seeing the tax, but we want to have the ability to retrieve the data of this particular tax when it is clicked on. So this, we are going to do it in two different ways. We are going to implement the backend functionality to retrieve the tax, and then we're going to use that to implement the front end functionality to get the tax, and then we are going to display it. So for now, let's try to implement the backend functionality. So I'm going to go back to my editor, and I'm just going to close all of these ones. And then I'm just going to scroll to where we have the task, and then open the task views. So here we can scroll down. All right, so we need to define a function. So I'm going to do def, and the name that I want to give to this function is just going to be get underscore task like the task like this. This is a function that is going to get the details of each task, and it's just going to take in a request like this. And then the next thing we also want to pass is just going to be the task ID underscore ID like this. Okay, so our front end, when we click on it, remember we were able to console log or alert the ID of the task. So we are clicking on an individual task, and it's going to give us the ID of that task. That ID is going to be passed from our front end to the back end over here. So it's just going to be passed over here. All right, so let's have a little bit of a plan. First is to get task by ID. The next thing we want to do is to construct. So I'm going to do construct a JSON response, and then we are going to return this particular response to our front end. So what we are going to be doing is, first of all, getting the tags. Let me come here and then I'm going to try to get a tag. So try. So when we try and the task is available, we are going to get it. So it's just going to be task, that is the object or how I want to store it, and we're going to do task dot objects. So this is going to be the tax model, and we have already imported it. Dot objects dot get, and we want to get the tax by ID. Get ID is equal to task underscore ID like this. That was the one that was passed from the backend to the front end. So this is actually going to get a tax if it exists, but in case it does not exist, that's where the exception comes in. But I want to catch this exception very well, so I'm going to do except, and I'm just going to do tax dot, and we have does not exist. So if the tax does not exist, I want to return a message. So return, so I'm just going to give a message. The server is going to return a message to the front end, and the message is just going to be in a JSON response like this, and this response is just going to have a dictionary, and the first message or what we want to pass is just going to be an error like this. So we want to show them that this is an error, and the message body or the error is just going to be task that's not, or task not found. That is just going to be simple. And from there, we also want to add a status code. The status code is just going to be 404. Obviously, it's just going to be a 404. And then from there, if it's a Okay, so at this point, we tried and we have had a tax. If it does not exist, the program is just going to end over here. It's just going to return this response to the front end. But if it exists, it's just going to jump this particular part and we can now continue with our code. So if it exists, we want to check to see if the request or the method we are using is a get request and not a post request. So I'm just going to do if request dot method. So we want to check to see, sorry, method. We want to check to see if the method we are using is a get request. So I'm just going to put it in a double quote like this. So we say get. If it is a get request, then what you want to do at this point is just going to be constructing the JSON response. So let me back up this a bit. Let me bring it at the top here. So we want to construct the JSON response. So I'm just going to define a dictionary tags underscore data. So that is how we are constructing it. And this is just going to be a dictionary. Inside this dictionary, we want to pass the ID of the tag. So we say ID, and the ID of the tags is just going to be the tags that we have queried from the database over here. So we say tags.id like this. But we all know that the tags ID is of the format UUID, but we want to return a simple string. So I'm just going to cut this and do str. So this is going to convert it to a string. After that, I'm just bringing a comma, and we also want to send the name of the tag. So the name is just going to be name and name like this. That's how we are going to access it on the front end. And then we are going to do task.name like that. And I also have to bring a comma just to be safe. And then the next thing is just going to be the description. So we say description, and then the description is just going to be task.description like that. And we also want to show the start date and then the end date. So let me bring that. So start underscore date like this, and this is how we are going to show it. We're going to do a task dot start date. That is when the start date exists. We want to convert it into an ISO format. So we're going to do ISO underscore format like this. That is when it exists. But then in case it does not exist, so we're going to do task dot start date. So in case it does not exist, we want to return just an empty string. So I'm just going to copy this for the due date because it's just the same with the exception of the name. So due underscore date, but don't forget to also change start dot tags dot due date and then due date like that. So we are also going to convert the due date into an ISO format if the tax has a due date, else we are just going to convert it. So we are just going to return nothing. And after we have done this, let me close this one up, and then we can now return. So let's return, and we are going to return the JSON response, which is going to take in the dictionary, and the name of the dictionary or the value is just going to be task underscore data. You can just use anything for that, and then we are going to pass our dictionary over here, and then we send it to the front end like that. So after we have done this, we need to hook up this to our urls.py. So I'm just going to copy this, the name over here, and then I'm just going to go into our task and look for URLs over there. So let me collapse the sidebar like this, and then I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to do path, and this path we are actually going to construct the URL. So first is just going to be the ID or the parameter we are passing. So this parameter is of type UUID, so we need to be aware of that UUID column, and the name we are passing from the backend over here, or the function, is just going to be task underscore ID. So you say task underscore ID. So that is what we are passing. And from there, we need to bring our / and then do get. So this is going to be the tax ID / get. and that is going to get our tax ID for us. Sorry, our tax data for us. So the name of the function is just get tax, and we also need to import it over here just to be safe. And from there, we need to give it a name. So the name we want to give it is name. I want to leave it as the name of the tax like this. Okay, so this is just going to be our URL like that, and it's just so simple. So I'm just going to save changes, and we need a way to test this, whether it works or does not work. But the way we are going to test it is just going to be in the other video. But for now, let's test it using our browser. So I'm going to go into the browser over here. Let me copy one of these URLs. So from here, I'm just going to copy and then paste it over here. But then when we go into our app, let me go into the main URL. So I'm going to go to Swift app, into the main URLs, and this is how we are accessing the tags. So all our tags imports or all our tags URL is going to have tags in front. So I'm just going to copy this and then put it over here. And then from there, we said we are also going to use a UUID. So we need to get the ID of the tags. So UUID. So I'm just going to go into the tags that we created on the dashboard here if we could find a way to get the ID. But then I think the ID, this is for the project. This is actually for the project. Let me go into our backend, go into tags over here. And this is the tags that we just created, I believe so. Let me compare, create a front end for Swift app. So I'm just going to come here, and this is the ID, the UUID over here. I'm going to copy up to the B4, copy it, come back to our page, and then paste it over here. And then the last piece of it is just going to be the get. So let me even bring / over here, save it, and then I'm going to bring the get like this, / get like this, and then bring it. So I'm going to hit on enter, and now it's telling us the tax ID is what we have put over here. The name is create a front end for Swift app, and then the description is null because we don't have any description. Let me check and add a description inside here. This is a test, something like this, and I'm going to save it. So once I do that, I'm gonna come here, and when I refresh, hopefully the description should be changed. So this is a text, and inside our code we stated that when there is no description, when there is no start date, it should be null, and when there is a start date, it should put it in an ISO format. And we did the same thing for the due date. So I'm gonna go back here and then go to that particular task and then give it a start date and then due date, save it, come back here, refresh, and this is what we have over there. All right, guys, I think we have achieved the goal of this video, and in the next video, we are going to implement a front-end functionality to get the tags and display it in the modal without we even having to do it in the browser like this. I will see you in the next video. Let's request to the backend and return this data for us, the tax ID, name, description, and then the start date, and then the end date. What we want to do is not to make the get request inside the browser, but we want to have the ability to make this request when we click on this pencil icon. That is just going to push the tax ID to the get request or the URL, and then it's just going to return this data. This data that is returned is just going to be set into the forms over here. So essentially that is what we want to do. So I'm just going to close this one, come back into our editor, and then I'm just going to close this because we don't need it, but I'm going to go into the project and open the Kanban board. So this is where we are making that, or where we are opening the modal. So I'm just going to come and then comment that one out because we are just going to do the opening later in the code. But for now, I'm just going to make a comment and say, make AJAX request to the server. That is where we are going to make the AJAX request. And here we are going to use fetch. So we do fetch like this. And this is actually going to require the URL and then a dictionary. So the first thing we want to do is to use backtext, because I want to pass the current text ID into the URL. So when we pass it, it's just going to be gotten from here, and that is just going to be injected into our URL, and it's going to form the URL like this. That is the whole idea. So first of all, we come into this place and we know that you're going to require or get, you want to get the URL begins with start. I do tags / and then the next thing we want to do at this part is to use the $ and then this curly bracket like that. And from here, we want to pass the current text ID. So this current text ID is just going to be injected into this part of our code or the URL. And then from there, we're going to do /get / like this. And then the next part of the things that the fetch is going to require is just going to be a dictionary of the things that we want to pass, like method. So this method is just going to be, we have actually specified in our backend that the method is going to be a get method. So we do get like this. And from there, we also want to pass the header. So the headers itself is just going to be, a dictionary of itself, and what we want to pass is the content type. So the content type we want to specify as content dash type like this, and then the type is just gonna be application dash JSON. So we do applications like JSON like that. Okay, so now that we have also found this or done this, the next thing we want to do at this point is to, now the get request has been made and the server is just going to return something for us. So we want to do .then. So we do .then, and at this point we want to get a response from the server. So this response is gonna have to be converted into JSON. So we say response.json like this. And after the server has returned or converted, after we have converted this into JSON, the next thing we want to do is another .then, and that is where we are picking the data from. So we say data. So that is going to be the response that has been converted into the JSON, or the JSON format of our response from the server. And from there, I'm just going to do this. And from here, I'm just going to bring this curly bracket. And this is where we make our if condition, because now there is data coming through. But we want to check to see if the data has an error or the data does not have an error, but it's the actual data we are expecting. So we do if, and what we want to check is that data.error, because in our backend, we actually specify. So let me scroll to where we have the views, and then we say if there is an error here, when we try and the tags does not exist, we are going to have error. So that is going to be data.error. So if the data has error, what do we do? So we want to just, we can do whatever we want with it at this time, but what I'm going to be doing is to console log. You can actually choose to display it nicely to the user. But for the purpose of this tutorial and this development that we are doing, we want to console log this particular data to the user, and that is just going to be console dot, let's do even error like this, and what we want to pass is that task is not found. So we say task not found like that. So that means the task is not found. But in case there is no error, so that means we have the actual data, and what we want to do at this point is to do else. So inside the else, we want to run this particular thing. What we want to do is that the data, we want to actually say task, that is very self-explanatory, is equal to, or very descriptive. So we say task is equal to data dot, this particular data is just gonna be not, this particular data is just gonna be in this format. So if you come back to where we made a call, this is the response, but then the response was inside the tax underscore data. So now we do, so here we need to get it. So we have to go one level deep, and that is gonna be task underscore data like this. So this is actually going to fetch the tax data for us. After we have done this, let's console log.log, and we want to log the tax data over here, or the tax like this. So in case it fails, we are just going to log this error, and in case it doesn't fail, we are just going to log the tax or the tax data over here. So I'm just going to save changes for now, and then we are just going to refresh our application. So I'm going to come to the app, go to this part, I'm going to refresh it like this, and then I'm also going to right click and then go to this particular part, the console, and I'm going to click on this, and now we are console logging the data. So we are seeing that this is the task and this is the description. Everything is over here. So that is so sweet. Let's go back into our code, and now we can set this data back into our forms. All right, so the first thing we want to do at this point is to go back into our tax form, not project forms, but then the tax forms. Inside the forms here, let me collapse the sidebar, and then you're going to realize that the fields that we are presenting are these particular fields. We have the name, description, priority, start date, and then end date. But there's nothing about the tax ID, but we need to pass the tax ID from the front end to the back end so that we can make our AJAX request with it, or the search with it. All right, so to do that, I have to define, let me make a comment, hidden input. So we need to provide or define another field called tax ID. So I'm going to call it tax underscore ID like this. And that is going to be forms dot, and I'm going to give it car field. So this car field is just going to have a widget. The widget is just going to be forms dot, and we're going to give it a hidden input because we don't want anybody to see the tax ID, or we don't want anyone to be able to mess with the tax ID. So after this, we also need to pass required. So it's just going to be a boolean that is going to be true. So now I can save it. All right. So after I have saved this, I'm going to come back to our forms over here. But one thing I want you to note, I want to inspect element on this particular form or the modal, and then get some few IDs from this particular thing. So for that, I'm just going to open the modal for now, but I will comment it out later. So let me come back here, refresh, and then I'm just going to click. Let me clear this once. I'm just going to click on this. And once I click on it, it's actually showing us all the tax details. That is something that we console log. All right, so now we right click, go to inspect element, and now we are on the inspect element. But then when you look at this part, we have ID underscore name that is highlighting this one. When you come to this part, we have the description. So this is going to be the description part. We are going to be needing all of that. But then another input is now the ID underscore task ID, and it's a hidden input. So suppose I come back here, and instead of doing hidden input, I just do text input like this, and then do this. I'm gonna save it, come back, refresh the page, and I'm gonna click on this one once more. And when you scroll down, we are seeing the tax ID, which is now a text input, but we don't want anybody to see that there is a tax ID so that they can mess with it. That's why we changed it to hidden input over here. So now we'll do hidden input. Okay, so I'm gonna just come here, and once we have the IDs over here, I'm just gonna do this. Let me comment this one out, and then come scroll down. So this is the part we want to set the IDs and all that. So let me comment it out over here. Or let me delete this part. Okay. So first thing first, we want to set the IDs. So to set the IDs, let's first of all get the modal. So I'm gonna come to the very top and then get hold of the modal. So at this point, I'm just gonna do const, and we do tax modal. Let me do tax update modal like this. Okay, so tax update modal. And this tax update modal is just going to be equal to, so we want to select that modal. So document dot, and we want to get element by ID. So the ID of this modal is just going to be the tax update modal. So when we go back into our modal, scroll to where we have the tax modal, scroll here, and the ID is over there. So I'm going to copy it, come back to this place, and then paste it like this. Okay, so this is going to get us the tax update model like that. So once we have the tax update model, we can scroll down to this very bottom where we have fetched the tax, and we want to set the data inside. Let me make another comment. Setting data into form fields like this, form fields. Okay, so this is the comment, but we want to do tax update model, which is something we have selected at the very top here. And now we can do dot. So what we want to do is to do query selector like this. And what we want to select is an input of the type. So we do input, and then the type of the input. We want where the name, we have an input where the name is equal to. So the name is equal to, we go back onto our forms, and here let's inspect. So the first thing I want to get is the tax ID. So where the name is equal to. So let me scroll down. Name, this is an input name. Now we want a tax or a field on the form on the modal that has a name of task ID. So when you come here, we have name and we have tax ID over here. So I'm just going to put tax ID of this inside of it. So it is actually going to select it. And once that thing is selected, we do dot value. So we want to assign the value of this one to be equal to task, which is this particular task dot ID like this. So that is going to set it up for that. Let me just test to see if everything is working before I go ahead and then set the other ones. Before I even do that, let me also change this part to text input like this. And now that I have done this, I need to open the modal at the very bottom over there. So I'm just going to go to where we are opening the modal, copy this particular code, scroll down to this part, and I'm just going to do show modal like this. So show modal like this. So here, I'm just going to show the modal like this. I'm going to save changes to this and then save changes to the forms as well. Come back here and remember to refresh it. So after I have refreshed, I'm just going to hit on this. And now when you scroll down, we have the tax ID over here. And that's because it is a text input. We can mess with it over here, but that's not something we want to do. So let me go back. I only wanted to show you how the tax ID is being added to the fields, and that is how it is going to help us make the AJAX request to the backend. Okay, so I'm just gonna go to the Kanban board again, and then over here, sorry, not the Kanban board, but then inside the form, and then where we are doing text input, I'm just gonna do hidden input like this so that it doesn't show on the page. All right, so now that we are setting this, we can just scroll down again, copy this. I'm just gonna copy this several times. So I'm just gonna paste, and then paste it. Okay, so here we have an input with name tax ID. The next input we want to have is just gonna be the name. So where the input, let's go back to this one, and where the input has a name of name. So we're gonna come here, and when the name is equal to name, we want to set tax.name over here. So we do name. And then the next one I believe is just gonna be the description, even though I've not inspected it, but I think it has to be description. So modal body, and now we have the description. So the name is just gonna be description over here. So I can copy it, come back, and then paste it over here. I believe the next one is just gonna be tax. The next one is just gonna be priority like this, and that is gonna be, this one is gonna be the description, and this one is also gonna be priority if it is spelled right. And last but not the least, I'm gonna copy, and then you're gonna have one for the start date and then the due date. So here for start date, it's just gonna be start underscore date, and that is gonna be tax.start date. So let me copy, paste it, over here, and then we're also gonna have due dates, due underscore date, and that is gonna be the due date. Let me confirm these ones before we even go ahead and then test the application. So I'm gonna scroll down. We have the priority, which is correct. We priority, and then the name is priority. We also have the start date. So the name is expected to be start date. So let me check start date. So we have start date over here, and okay. So start date, you should scroll and then check for where the name is start date. We also have the due date over here. So once we have all these things in place, all right, so now we can just test. But before we even go ahead and test, we need to make these corrections. If not, we're going to run into serious errors. And the first error we're going to run into is just going to be the text area. So this one is not an input, it's going to be a text area for the description. Because even on our backend, we made it, let's check to see, description is text area. So we have to specify that. So instead of inputs, I'm just going to do text area. So text area like this. And then when it also comes into the priority, is also a select. So back on the forms, we go to priority, and that is a select. We also have to fix that one over here, and we do select like this. So now that we have done all these changes, I'm going to come back to this place and then save changes like that. So right from there, I'm going to come to this part and then refresh our front end. So once the front end is refreshed, we're going to have to click on this pencil icon, and hopefully we should have the data pre-populated. So we clicked, and now we are having this is a text. So I'm just going to go into my backend, go to create this, and this is a text. I'm going to come to it's worked like this as a description for this particular one, and I'm also gonna click on save, come back to our front end, close this, and click on it again, and it says it's worked. So that means we are now being able to pre-populate this data from the back end to the front end. One more thing I want to add is to come, because we made an if statement over here. So the else part is, I'm going to come to here and then do dot. And we want to catch if there are errors. So if there are errors, what we want to do is say error, and this error, we're just going to do this. And then we're going to run this. So we say console.log. So going to be console.log or console.error. And the error we want to show to the user is just going to be a message like error fetching data. So we're going to do error fetching data like this, fetching data. And then we also want to show them the actual error. So I'm going to bring a comma and then do error like this, put it over here, and I'm also going to close it like that. Just bring the semicolon over here. And now I think everything is working pretty much. Let me save it. Come back to our dashboard over here. Not even the dashboard, the Kanban board over here. I'm just going to refresh. And let's say we create another task. So the task, I'm just going to give it any name. Create, what do you call it? Maybe YouTube video. Suppose it's a task we want to do. So it has shown over here. So I'm just going to refresh the page, and then I'm going to click on this particular one, and it says create YouTube video. So we can go into the backend, refresh, add some few details like the start date, end date, and all that. So let me do any random description, come back, change this one, and then I'm gonna also set the start date and then the end date. So now I can close this, click on it one more time, and the data we enter, this thing is coming straight away from the backend. So this is how to make an API call from the backend, from the front end to the backend, and then get the data and set it into a model like this. So in the next video, we're just going to go ahead and then update this particular task. I'm just going to see you over there. Bye for now. All right, guys. So now that we can click and see the details of a particular task, The purpose is to be able to change, modify these tags and then click on save changes. So what we're going to be doing is to divide it into two. So the first part is going to be where we create a backend logic to save this data into the database. And then the other part is just going to be the front end logic to actually save the data. So we're going to have the back end and then the front end. So to do this, I'm just first of all going to zoom out a bit, close all these ones because I don't need them. Come back here to the task model or the tax app. So inside the tax app, I'm just going to go to views like this. And this is where we are going to create our backend logic to do that. And it's going to be a function based view. So I'm just going to define a function and that is going to be and the name is going to be update task, update underscore task like this. So this update task is just going to take a request like usual, and it's also going to take task ID, task underscore ID like this. So after we have created these ones, we need to get a task. So the task is just going to be task is equal to, and that is going to be get object 404. We can just do the try or get object of 404. So I'm going to do get underscore object or 404. But we need to import, we first of all need to import it. So I'm going to come to the very top because it's not imported. And to import it, it's just going to be under here, comma, get object of 404. And I'm just going to copy it like this, scroll down to where we are using it, and that is going to get object 0404. And this function is just going to require two things. So the first is going to be the model that we are querying from. So we have to pass the task like this. That is the model we are querying from. And then the next is just going to be the lookup field. So ID and is going to be equal to the task ID we are passing over here. So I'm going to copy and then paste it over here. So this is either going to return a 404, that means the task was not found, or is actually going to give us the task that is actually found. So at this point, we assume that task is actually found. So if the task is found, we move on to the next thing. The next is to check whether the method is a post request, because we are obviously making a post request, not a get request. So we check to see if request, so I'm going to do request dot method. So we're going to check the method if it is equal to post request. So if it is post, we do post like this. Let me do all caps like this. So if this condition is satisfied, the next thing we also want to do is to say form. So form lowercase is equal to, and we're gonna get our tax update from tax update form. So let me see if the tax update form is imported. I'm not sure it is imported. So we're gonna do from dot forms import, and we need to import task update form like this. So now that it is imported, we can scroll down here and pass a few parameters to it. So the first is just going to be request dot post. So we pass the post request over here like this. And the next thing we also want to pass is the instance. So the instance is just going to be equal to the task that we have defined over here. So we pass the request and then the instance, which is a task object, and we have now passed it over here. Okay, so after we have passed this, we need to check to see if this form is valid. And the form is going to be valid if the validation on the forms are satisfied. Like if, let's go back into a form and I'll show you something. Here we specify that required is going to be equal to, well, so description is not compulsory. So if description is left unfilled or it's not filled, if it is empty, it is valid. But then places like start date where we didn't specify the required. So if required is not specified, and even for the tax ID here, we say required is equal to be true. So if the person does not set the tax ID, or even for these ones like start date and due date, and the priority is not set. If priority is not set, it is supposed to be required, but it's not set. So that means the form at this point is not valid and it's going to return an error. So that is what we are doing over here. So if form dot, and we want to do is underscore valid like this, valid. If it is valid, then we are going to go ahead and then continue saving the task. But if it is not valid, then we are going to do something else. So we say task.save. At this point, we can save the task into our database. And once it is successfully saved, we need to return it. So at this point, let me make return response. So when I return response and we do return, then we pass it to JSON response. And at this point, we need to pass the dictionary. So the first thing is just going to be a success. So we say success. So success is just going to be equal to true like this. And after we have passed that one, we also want to pass the name of the tax, but that one is also going to be in another dictionary. So here I'm just going to do tax, updated tax like this, updated task like this, updated task like this. So this updated task is just going to be a dictionary, and this dictionary is just going to have the name of the task. So I think I have already done that at the top over here. So I can just even copy the whole of this and rename it to updated task. So I'm just going to do this and then paste it over here. What is it? And I'm just going to do updated task. Paste it over here, and instead of equal to, I'm just going to do this because this is a dictionary we are talking about. So that is when the form is valid. Let's look at the else part. So if the form is not valid, so let's say else, let's do else. If the form is not valid, then we need to return another response. Return. So let me make a comment and with the return then form errors. Let me do form errors. So we need to return these errors, and that is also going to be in a JSON format. So that is JSON response. So here we're going to say it's also going to be in a dictionary. So first thing we say success. So success is just going to be equal to false like this. So I'm going to do false like this. Then we can also return the error. So we say errors, and this errors is just going to be form dot errors like that. Perfect. So this is when the form is not valid, but we also made a condition that if the method is post. If the method is not a post method, we also need to return something. So I'm going to do return. The return, and what we're going to be returning is also a JSON response, and like I told you, it's always a dictionary. So inside this dictionary, we need to pass a success message. So we say success, and definitely it's just going to be false over here. So we say false. Good. And the next thing we also want to pass is the error. So error, and then the error is just going to be, let's give them a message. Let's give them a message. We say invalid request method, something like invalid request method like this. And we can also pass the status code. So the status, and the status code is just going to be 405 like that. All right, so this looks pretty much good, but we need to test it. So let me first of all copy the name of our function. We go back to our views. Inside the views, we need to import this particular view over here. Perfect. So after we have imported a view, I'm just going to bring a comma, and that is just going to be a path for this. And the URL, let's form the URL over here. It's pretty much going to be almost identical as the get. So I'm just going to copy and then paste it just to be quicker. And from there, we need to pass, we need to change, instead of get, we need to do updates. And after we have done that, we also need to change the name of the function. That is just going to be update task, and the name over here is also going to be update task. All right, guys, so that is pretty much it. Let me go back to our browser and try to form this particular URL. And instead of get, I'm going to do update and hit on enter. And now it's telling us success is going to be false. and the error is just gonna be invalid request method. So if you come back to our code over here, that is where it is coming from. So we have false because it's not a post request. We are actually doing the get request in the browser, and then the method is invalid request method. That is the 405. So everything is working pretty much good. But for us to be able to test it, we actually need to work on the front end to test the post request, because we cannot test the post request without a form over here. All right, so in the previous video, we were able to create a backend functionality to update the task. So we were able to test it here, but because it's a post request, we weren't able to test it in the browser, but we were able to test if the method is not a post method. So that's why we had this error over here. And to be able to test it, we need to actually use a form and then submit it because it's a post request. All right, so we are able to click on this and it shows us this pop-up. So once we have this pop-up, we should be able to fill this information and then update it. So we want to implement the front-end functionality. And to be able to do that, we first of all have to go back into our form. So let me hide this and then go back onto our tax update modal. So inside our tax update modal, you're going to realize that the form that is coming from the backend isn't in an actual form, HTML form. So let me remove these comments quick. And then first of all, I'm just going to, between the modal body where we have our backend form, I'm just going to cut it out and then bring an HTML form. I'm going to do form. And inside this form, I don't need action. So I'm just going to clear the action part. But what I need is just going to be an ID for the form. So I'm going to do ID, and that is going to be equal to, I'm just going to call it task updates form like that. So after I have given the form, I'm supposed to put the backend form within this. But before I even go ahead and do that, I'm just also going to provide a div over here. And this div, I'm just going to give it a class. I'm just going to give it ID actually, so that in future, I should be able to target it. And the ID I'm going to give this form is just going to be tax dash form dash body like this. And in between or inside the div, I'm just going to put our HTML form over here. And because we want to submit this particular form, we need to move all the buttons on the page. Let me show you real quick here. When you click, we have the close and then the save button. So I need this button within the HTML form. I'm just going to come here and then cut these ones and then move them right inside the form over here. All right, so I have now moved them inside of this, and a couple of things that I want to do. The button, in fact, I just want to change this one to input like this, input. And after I have changed it to input, I also want to change the type. The type is just going to be submit like this. And after I have changed the submit, I also want to give it a name. So I'm going to give it a name like, the name is just going to be equal to, so let me give it something descriptive. I'm just going to do task underscore updates like this. Oh, so there is an error here. Let me also clear this one. So we gave it a name as task update. Okay, so after we have done this, we should also give the form a CSRF tokens, because we want to actually satisfy Django security measures. So I'm just going to do CSRF token. All right, so we provided a CSRF token just to satisfy Django security measures. And right after that, we can just go back to our Kanban board and I'm going to refresh the page. We still have our task. I'm just going to click on this. And now we see this pop up. So nothing visually has been changed, but then behind the scene, we have done a lot of improvement over there. So I'm just going to close this one so that we can go ahead and implement our functionalities. Okay, so inside the Kanban board, I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of the board. And there I can, let me collapse the sidebar. And I also want to make a comment. So right under where we are actually opening the modal, I'm going to scroll to the very bottom and then make a comment over here. So the comment is just gonna be updating task like this. And a couple of things that we want to do at this point is, first of all, grab our form. So the main reason why we give the form an ID is to be able to target the form. So we should be able to target it over here. So what I'm gonna do is to do const, and the name, I'm just gonna give it a form. And how we are targeting is to use documents dot, and we want to get it by ID because we provided an ID, and we are just gonna grab the name or the ID of the document or the form over here. Perfect. So now this one is going to give us the form. So what I want to do is to even console log. So I'm going to do console.log, and I want to log the form to see. So I'm going to do form like this. All right. So let's go back to our page. And on the page, I'm just going to bring up my sidebar. And now I'm just going to refresh the page to see the form. So when I refresh the page, when you come here, we are seeing this particular form being console logged. Every information of the form is just console logged over here. So this is a very good improvement. That means you are able to target the form on the page. After we have targeted the form, I don't need this particular thing anymore. Then the next thing we want to do is to add an event listener to the form. So I'm just going to do form dot, and the event listener, add event listener like this. And the event listener we want to add is just going to be the submit. That's where we moved the button for submitting the form inside the form itself. So you want to do submit like this. Perfect. So right after that, we want to run this function. So function, and we want to pass the event over here. And right after that, we want to prevent default behavior when the form is submitted. So instead of reloading the page, we want the page not to be reloaded, but actually submit the data. So we want to do event dot prevent default. So we are preventing the default behavior like that. Okay, so let me also bring this one over here. And now we can form or compose the form data or get the input of the data from the form that the user has actually submitted. Okay, so to do that, I'm just gonna do const, and we say form data. That's how I'm just gonna call it. And this form data is just gonna be equal to new form data like this. And now we can pass our form over here. So this is our form, and that has been passed to the form data like so. So this actually gets our form data for us. Anything that we enter into it will be stored in the form data. So right after that, we need to use fetch to make the API call. So I'm going to do fetch like this. And this fetch is going to be looking for the URL plus some dictionaries that we are going to attach to it. And the way we are going to form the URL, I'm just going to do this backtick so that I can pass the current tax ID to it. So let's go back into our browser, and the URL is on tax, and then the ID /update. So it's much like what we did when we are trying to get the tax details over here. So I'm just going to scroll to where we did that. This is it somewhere here. All right, so this is it. So I can just copy this particular part to the comma and then scroll down to where we are making the fetch, and I'm just going to replace everything over here like this. Okay, so we are on tax, current tax ID. That is the tax that has been clicked. So once we click the tax, we are going to get the ID of the tax that has been passed over here. And now the next part of the URL is not going to be get, because we are not getting the tax, but it's rather going to be updates like this. Perfect. So after we have formed the URL, the next thing we want to do is to be able to attach some details like the type of method we are using and all that. So I'm just going to bring this curly brackets over here. And the first thing we want to pass is just going to be the method. And this method is just going to be, we have specified in our backend that the method is just going to be a post method. So we did that over here. So I'm just going to come and do post over here. So post all caps. And then the next thing we also want to do is the body. This isn't a get request. This is a post request. So we need to pass the form data. So I'm going to do body over, body, and the body is just going to be equal to the form data we have formed over here. So I'm going to copy the form data and paste it. And then the last part we also want to add is just going to be the headers. So I'm going to do headers. And this headers, this time around, we are not sending applications like JSON, but we are looking for the CSRF tokens. I'm going to do X dash and then CSRF token, CSRF token like this. So this is what you're looking for, and we need to pass it as part of the headers. And the way we are going to get it is from the form. So when you come into our update form over here, we included the tags, the CSRF token over here. But how do we get it? How do we target it on our front end? So I'm going to come to this part, refresh the page once again, click on the edit button just to get the form over here. Now, everything on the page doesn't have anything that has to do with the CSRF token. And the best way to see something about it is just to go into this inspector, and inside the inspector here, let's look for, I'm coming. Okay, so let me right click again. And we are now in the inspector. So inside the inspector, we have the input over here. But at the very top where we have the form ID, that is a tax update, we also have a hidden input that is CSRF token. So let me copy this because this is the name we can use to target our form. All right. So I'm going to come back into our Kanban board. And now we can do document.querySelector, documents, no caps, document dot, and we do query selector over here. And what we are going to be selecting is just going to be the form, and the form has a name. So we pass in the name. We pass the name. So we are looking for element on the page which has a name of CSRF token like this. So we have now passed the CSRF token just there, and then we also need to grab the value. So the value at this part is just going to be here. But the way we are going to grab the value is to do dot value. So that is going to get this element with the name CSRF token and then a value like this and attach to our form so that Django can authenticate that. So I'm going to go back and then do dot value like this. So now we have had a value over there. Okay, so at this point, we have made our API request to the backend. All right, so after we have made this request to the backend is going to return with a response. So this response, after it has been returned, we need to convert it to JSON format. So I'm just going to do dot then, and then the response is what the backend is returning, and we need to convert it to like response.json over here. So this response, after it has been returned, we want to store it in. So I'm just going to do another dot then, and that response is just going to be stored in a data like this so that we can access it. This data, we want to actually check to see if the data has errors or it has no errors. So here we want to check if the data has errors or no errors. We're going to do if, and you want to do data dot success. So if the data is successful, like the request is successful, because in our backend we did success is equal to true. So if data dot success, that means if success is equal to true, that means we have the data over here. So we want to do something with it if it is successful. We need to change the title of the tags on the board. And to do that, we need to actually go back into our code for all the boards. So first of all, let's go to the backlog, and it's going to be the same for all of it. So this is a card that is actually containing our task. So let me bring up this. So when you take this particular card, this is the div that is actually containing it. And this div has a class of task card. If we are able to target this particular class, then we can combine this class together with the data dash tax ID, that data attribute that is giving us the tax ID. We combine that particular one with the class, and that is going to give us the card or the container or the div for that particular tax that is being clicked on. And from there, we can just find an element within that particular class, within that particular div that has a class of card dash title. And it has the name property over here so that we can set it. So if you don't understand it, don't worry. I'm just going to go into the code and we'll do that and you are going to get it from there. So I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom over here. And now we can do document dot, and we do query selector. So this one right here. And inside here, we need to use a backtick because we need to provide the current tax ID over there. All right. So what we're going to be doing is to, first of all, get the class. So it's task-card. All right. So all the tags that we are showing on our board has a class, and the class is tax-card. So we are just going to get that particular class over here. But after we have gotten the class, how do we know that the class, or is it not going to select all of it? So we need to append certain details to it, like the tax ID. That is going to give us the specific tax that is being clicked. All right, so to do that, I'm going to bring a square bracket over here. And inside the square bracket, we need to provide the data attribute. So that is data dash task dash ID. That is actually holding the title. So data dash tax dash ID, and each of these elements or tags having a class. Oh, sorry, I brought P here. Let me remove it. Having a class also has a data attribute. So we now need to access the data attributes or the data attribute. This data attribute is going to give us the tax ID. So I'm just going to do equal to, and then in the double quote, provide the tax ID over there. So that is going to make it unique from all the others. I'm just going to bring this $, and aside the $, also bring a square bracket over here, and then pass the current tax ID that we have passed over here. So this class, which all the other tags has, in combination with the data tax ID or the data attribute, will give us a unique tax. And once we have found that, we also need to do one more thing. And the thing we want to do is to get the card dash title over there. So when you go back into our code, let me scroll up. Okay, so let me scroll up a bit. And here we had a class that is the container containing the tax. So the class is tax card. And we also want to combine the data attributes, which is given us the tax ID. So this in combination with this is actually going to give us the correct tax that we have clicked on. And inside this particular div, we are looking for another class called card title. So this card title is going to have the name of the tax, and that is what we want to replace. That's essentially what we have done at the bottom over here. So when I scroll down, we have gotten the task card, which is the main div, and we access the data attribute and added the current tax ID. And in there, we are going to get the card title. And right after we have gotten the card title, we want to do dot text content. So the text content is just going to help us access the content inside of that element. And there we want to set it or replace it. So we do data, which is now being stored as a data variable over here coming from the backend dot, and we need to access another property from this. So we have the tax data, but I don't want to leave it as tax data because in the backend we did tax data, but I want to leave it as updated task like this to see that it is the updated tax. So I'm going to come to the Kanban board and do dot updated tax. So inside this updated tax, we have dot name. So I'm just going to go back and do dot name over here. And that is essentially going to replace the name on the board for us with the new name. Perfect. So now that we have done this, that is when the data is successful. what if it is not successful? And even before I move on to when the data is not successful, we also need to close or hide the modal. So let me make a comment, hide modal over here. And the way we are going to hide the modal is just like how we showed the modal. So at this part, I'm gonna copy it, come back to where we are hiding the modal, and we do dot, instead of show, we do dot hide over here. That is going to hide the modal over there for us. Perfect. So what if we have some errors? So that is just gonna be the else part of the whole thing. And when we have errors, this is how we are going to handle it. So you want to do console.error. So do console.error, and we need to pass the message we want to pass over there. So the message I want to pass is just gonna be error updating task like this, and we can even go ahead and then get the error from the backend. So we do data dot error like that, and I can just bring this particular thing over here, and essentially I think we are done like that. So let me bring the last piece of it. So I also want to catch, so the catch, and what I want to catch is when there are errors. All right, so I want to catch it over here just to be safe. And inside here, I'm just gonna do error like this, and then the error, and I wanna console dot error. And now I can provide the error like this, and then even provide the error like error. I think we are done. We can go ahead and test, but there are a couple of fixes we want to do first. First, in our backend. So in our backend, we are not being consistent. So here we are saying errors, and then when it comes to this part, we are doing errors. But then in the front end, we can only use one of them. So we did data.errors, and that is going to return an error for us. So depending on that, is actually going to return an error. So you have to be consistent. So I'm going to come to this part, and where it says errors, I'm just going to do error so that we have error over here. That is the first fix we want to do. And also where it says tax.save, it's not supposed to be tax. It's not supposed to be tax that we are saving, but then we are saving the form data. So I'm gonna switch the tax with form here so that we do form.save. That is actually going to save the form. That is on the side of the front. That is on the side of our backend. Let's go back to our modal. And since we changed it from button to inputs, where we have the save over here, we have to cut this one out and then come inside somewhere over here and then do value. So the value is just going to be the text that we want to display. So the value is just going to be here, and I'm just going to save changes and save changes to this one. I'm going to bring up my terminal to see if it is running. Now everything is running. So let me close this one, refresh the page one more time, and I'm just going to click on create a front end. So this is the title, and we want to set the title over here. So instead of create a backend for front end for BSIMS, I'm just going to develop a backend for Swift hub like that. And we can also add something to this part. We can go ahead and then change all these ones, and let's say hi. And now when I click on save changes, if everything worked, it should also reflect the new title over here. So I'm just going to click on that, and now it says develop a backend for BSIMS. You can even click, and then you see that all these details are being set, but we have an issue with the priority. Let me go back into the backend, refresh the page, and go to where we have this particular task. So I'm just going to click on that, and it's actually getting the correct priority for us, but just that in our front end, we are not handling it very well. All right, so let's go ahead and then fix the issue with the priority. So I'm just going to click on this, and now we are seeing all the details, but then the priority is not being set. The reason why we are seeing priority not being set is because when you come into our code over here, so where we are doing the get request over here, we are sending the name, the the name and the IDs and all of that, but then we don't have anything for priority. So I'm just gonna copy one of these for like description, and inside the description, the one that I copied, I need to change it to priority. So I'm gonna do priority and then tax.priority like this. So this one should fix everything, because on the front end, let me go back to the Kanban board. We are doing an element with a name of priority, and we are actually setting it to the tax, the data that is coming, and we are adding the priority over here. We are setting it, but it wasn't actually returning anything like that. So right after that, I'm just gonna come here, close it, refresh my page one more time, and then I'm just gonna click on it once again, and it's now showing us that the priority is this. So we can go ahead and even change it to high, and then set it, and everything is gone. We can click, and now we have the priority to be high. All right, so I will see you in the next video. Bye bye. All right, guys, so welcome back. So in the previous video, we were able to update tags right on the Kanban board without having to refresh the page. In this particular video, what we want to do is to be able to have a task description added onto the board. So as it is with our current setup, the only thing we're going to see is the title of the task, but you also want to have full details like the description of the task. And let's take inspiration from the admin template we are using. So here, this particular task, create labels, has a description, and then create actions has a description. But if you come here, not all tasks is going to have a description. So what we want to do is, if the task has a description, we display it. If it doesn't have a description, we are not going to display it. So I'm just going to come into our code, but before that, let's scroll to where we have our template, and I'm just going to click on this particular one, the Kanban board, and then scroll to one of the tags, and this one has a description. So the tags is here, it starts from here. In fact, it starts from here, and this is the header part when there is no description. But if there is description, we want to append this card body to it. So I'm just going to copy it from here, and now I don't need this one anymore. So I'm just going to go into our Kanban board, and on the board we have 4 columns. So we have the backlog, to do, in progress, and completed. So you're going to scroll to all these places and then paste this particular div over there. So this one is on the backlog, and this is the header section. So right under the header, let me make a comment. Let me make a comment like description, task description, and I'm just pasting the task description over here. In fact, what we have is a dummy data coming from the template. I'm just going to leave it and then save it so that we refresh to see what we have on our board. So when I refresh, any task that is going to be on the backlog is supposed to have this description, but we need to do it for all of the tasks over here. Okay, so first of all, let's remove this dummy data from our application. And to remove it, we have to get the actual tags from the board, from the database. So what I'm gonna do is to do task.description like this, and then save it. I'm just gonna refresh, and now we are getting the description that it worked. So we're gonna have to duplicate this on all of our pages. So let me copy. Sorry, let me copy from here, including the comment. Copy from here, and then I'm just gonna go to all the other columns. So the first column is just, the next column is just gonna be there. So under the header, I'm just gonna put this one over there. That is for the to-dos, and from there we are also gonna go to the next one that is in progress, and in progress we're going to put this one over here, and then the final one is just gonna be completed. So I'm gonna scroll down under the header. I'm just gonna put this one over here and then save changes. All right, so at this point, all our columns are gonna have this. So let me refresh, and we are seeing it. But here is the problem. If the tags doesn't have a description, it's just going to have this none over there. But that is something that we don't want to see in our application. But before we go ahead and then fix that, let's go back, because now we can update a tags and it worked. We can update a tags and add some few details like this. But since in our application, we are only setting the title when the tax is completed and when the tax is updated. So I click on this and it's not going to have any details about the description. Meanwhile, the description has been updated. But when I refresh it, it's going to have this particular information over there. We want to automatically append or update this data, much like what we are doing with the title. So you're going to go into our Kanban board, scroll to the very bottom over here where we are making the post, the tax update. So where we made a tax update and the tax is successful, we set the title. We want to do the same thing for the description. So I'm going to copy this one and then come down here and then paste it over there. Okay, so let me also indent it a bit. Not like it will cause any problem, but I just want to have it nicely formatted. And we are doing card title. So this whole thing holds, but when we get to the title, we want to do card dash description like this, so that we can actually target that particular element. But now this doesn't actually exist. This class doesn't exist. So we're going to have to copy it, go back to where we are showing the description, and for all the boards, like the description, for all the board, we're going to give a class. So I'm going to do class, and this class, we are going to give it card dash description on the p tag. So I'm going to copy this particular class. Sorry. So I'm just going to copy this particular class. This is actually on the Kanban board and it's actually on the backlog. So we scroll down to where we have the to do. Here we also need to give the paragraph a class. And we scroll down again to where we have the completed, and we also have to give the paragraph a class. And then finally, I think they are supposed to be 4. So we have one here and another here. So this one we didn't give. So let's also give this particular one. All right. So once we have done this, we're going to go back down into our code where we are doing the update. And now we are targeting that particular class. And once we get that particular class, we want to set the content to the data.updated tags.description. Instead of name, we do description like that. Okay, so I'm just going to save this, and hopefully when we refresh and makes an update, it's supposed to reflect the current description. So I'm going to click on this one right now, and now it says it works. So I'm just going to add after description like this. Okay, so this is what we have done, and I'm going to change this one to create a backend. So once we save it, both the title and then the description is supposed to change. So I'm going to hit on that, and the title plus description is now changing. But the problem we have is just have to do with tags without description. But now when I click on it and then add a description, let's say description goes here, and then click on save. Oh, we should also add the date, the start date, and then the end date, because all these ones are required field. And once you do this and click on save, description goes here. Okay, looks like our problem is solved, but then it comes back when we create another task. Let's say another task like this on the board, and we refresh, and it's now going to come as none. And to solve that, we're going to go back into our code, get the board, like the to do, the in progress, and all of that. So you're going to scroll down to this one is backlog. So for the backlog, I'm just going to cut this one like this and make an if statement. So we're going to do if, and what we want to do is to check if the tax has a description. So you say tax.description like this. So if a tax is having a description, then we are going to go ahead and then render this particular div, the description div. But in case it doesn't have a description, then we are definitely going to ignore. We are not going to render it at all. So I'm just going to copy this, go back to all the other board or all the other columns, like the in progress, and we're gonna have to do the same thing for all of the others. Paste it, and then the last one is just gonna be the description, and then paste another one over here. So once you have pasted this, I'm just gonna save changes, and after I have saved changes, I'm just gonna refresh, and this thing, none here, should be gone. In fact, the whole div over here shouldn't be rendered at all. So let's refresh and see, and now we don't have it. But suppose we add a description, it's just gonna appear. If the text is having a description, it's gonna appear. So guys, I'm just gonna see you in the next video where we solved another problem that is gonna pop up for our current setup. So I'm just gonna see you in the next video. Bye bye. All right guys, so welcome back. So notice how we are able to create a description, update a text, and then set both the description and then the title on the board. So let me update this one. Hey there, maybe comma, it worked. And now we are updating the text with a new description. And when I click on it, it's actually updated. Let me bring up the sidebar like this and then come to this particular part, the text that doesn't have a description. Let's try to update it and see. So now we give it, this is a new task. Let me make it, this is a new task with new description. And when I save it, what you will be expecting is you were expecting it to update the tags with a new description right here on the board, but that's not what is going to happen. So let me click on it, and it actually creates the tags. You can even see in the description, this is a new task with a new description. In fact, when we go back here, it is going to have that particular details. But then the question is, why did it not work on the board? It actually couldn't set it. And the error we are having is can't access property test content. And it's actually telling us that the element we are looking for is null. And it is supposed to happen this way. Let me take you back to the code. Let's scroll down to where we are updating the tags. In fact, when I come here and then refresh, I can even close this one, refresh, and it's gonna work because we are having the description over here. But the question is, why couldn't it set it? All right, so when you go to where we are making the description, where we are updating the tags, when we update the tags, we set the title and then the description. Then we are looking for this particular card dash description. But when a description or when a tag doesn't have a description, we don't render this particular part. So this div, whole div is not going to be there. It's not going to be there so that we can even access that particular class. Let me go back here and then take out the description and then save it, come back here. And when I refresh it, this part is going to be gone. So once it is gone, that particular div does not exist. It's not like it's hidden. It doesn't exist at all. And once it doesn't exist, we cannot get that particular element. That's why we had that error. And the way we are going to solve it is to first of all make a condition. We have to check to see if it exists. If the card, that particular div exists, then we can actually append it or update the description. In case it doesn't exist, that means we need to create it. If not, we're going to run into this error all the time. So first of all, let me comment all these ones out. So I'm going to comment and then comment this one out. Perfect. So once we've done this, let me scroll to this part. Okay, let me give us enough room to work with. All right, so first, let me make a comment. Find the task card like this. Okay, so we first of all want to find the task card if the task has a card. So I'm just gonna do const and we're gonna do task card. It's just gonna be equal to documents dot, and we want to do query selector. So this one right here, query selector. And what we want to find is just gonna be, in fact, we have actually even done this. So I'm gonna copy all this one from starting from this place, query selector, all the way to this particular part. Okay, so query selector, and I'm just gonna do this, but we don't want to include the title over here so that it becomes general for the task card. So this is actually going to give us the task card. And once we have found the task card, the next thing we want to do is to check if the card actually exists. Okay, so let me make a comment, check if the card exists. Okay, so now we are looking for the card and we are storing that in this particular variable task card, but we now want to check if the card actually exists. And to do that, I'm going to do if, and we pass the task card. So it's a task card. So if the task card exists, what are we going to do? So we want to update the title because we don't have issue with the title at all. And the way we update the title is just going to be task card like this dot query selector. So now we want to get that particular one dot query selector like this. Okay, so what we want to do is to get an element with a class of card title. So dot, pretty much like what we did over here. So I'm just going to copy this particular one over here, and then I'm just going to update it with this one. So we want to get the element with card title, card dash title coming from this task card. And once we get that, we want to set the text content. So dot text content, and that is going to be equal to, so let me come back here and then copy it. So we want to replace it with this one. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it over here. So when the card exists, we don't have issue with the title, because if the card exists, the title is also going to exist and we can update the title right away. That's not true when it comes to the description. So the description may exist or may not exist, whether there is a description actually in the text. So we want to check to see if the description element exists. So check if card dash description exists. So if this exists, that means the div is actually rendered. That means the task has a description. But in case it doesn't exist, then we need to actually create it. So the way we can do that is to do let, and we say description. Let me do description element like this. So we want to check to see if the description element exists. And the way we are going to check is to do task card. So let me copy this part over here. Is to do task card dot query selector, and this time around we are doing card dash description. So description like this. And okay, so now that we have done this, let's check to see if the description element exists. So what I'm gonna do is to do if, and we want to check if description element. So if we have a description element, then what we can do is to go ahead and then update the description element. So I'm just going to come here and then do the update over there. So it's just going to be description element. So let me copy this one. If it exists, I'm going to do description element dot, and I can do test content like this, and that should be equal to, so I'm going to come to this particular part and then copy this. So data.description like this. All right, so this is when the description exists. But if the description does not exist, what do we do? So I just want to do else if, and I want to also check to see if the data has a description, the updated one has a description updated. So I'm just going to do this. So data.updated.description, if it exists, that means we have recently updated the description. And once we have updated it, we first of all want to construct or create the div. So first thing first, let's create the div. So I'm going to define a variable. So I'm going to do const. And to even create it, let's scroll up to where we are creating the description div in the code. So I'm going to scroll down to the very top of our HTML. So let's go into the HTML. And I'm just going to copy this particular div for inspiration. So we look at it and then create it automatically in our JavaScript. So I'm going to scroll down to where we are creating it over here. And I'm just going to paste it and comment it out. So let me comment all these ones out. All right. Now we need to create this particular div because it has been updated, but then it doesn't have a description element over there, but the data that is coming has a description updated. So I'm just going to do cons and then I'm just going to call it card body. So card body like this. And this card body is just going to be document.create element. And the element that we want to create is just going to be a div. So I'm just going to do div over here. So it's actually going to create this particular div over here. So once the div is created, we need to also add a class. So we say card body dot, and we do class list like this, and we want to add, and we want to add a class of card body, much like what we have over here. So I'm just gonna copy this and then paste it inside of this. And this one also has a class of card body to this particular div. That is perfect. And after we have done that, the next thing is to create this particular div. This particular paragraph. So we can go ahead and then create that one also. So we say description element. So this one, description element, and gonna be equal to, and we need to copy this one. And then I'm just gonna paste it over here like this. But this time around, instead of creating a div, you're creating a P, that is a paragraph. And after we have created a paragraph, we also need this particular one to add a class. So we're gonna do, instead of card body, we do description element dot add class, and the class that we want to add is just gonna be card dash description over here. So I'm gonna paste that one also over here. So right now, these elements, even though it didn't exist, but because we have updated the description of the tags, we are now creating this automatically. Okay, so right after that, we also need to set the description. So we're gonna do description element over here dot, and we say text content. So the text content is just gonna be equal to, and that is gonna be equal to data dot updated tags dot description, and this is just going to set the description, the newly created description inside of this particular div. And once we have set it, we can now go ahead and then add it or append them to the card body. Okay, perfect. So we need to append them. So we say card body like this dot, and we want to append child like this. And the child that we want to append is first of all going to be the description element. So we say description element. So this is actually going to append this description element to the card body over here, like what we have. So description, this is the card body, and this is the description elements over here. And we are now appending it. So now they become one. So after we have appended it, the last piece we want to do is to make sure that we append the card body to the task card. So we're going to do task card, which we have defined at the very top over here. Task card, this card, dot append child, dot append, and we're going to do child. So we are going to append the card body. So card body over here. And after we have done this, I can just do this particular thing. And right from there, the next thing I also want to check to see, append, and this is pretty much it. But you see here, we made an if statement that card exists. So that is when the card exists. What if the card does not exist? So I'm just gonna do else That is when the card does not exist, and the else part is just gonna be a console log. You can do whatever you want with it. I mean, display something nice, but what I'm gonna do is to do console.error, and then the error that I wanna send, or the message that I wanna send, is gonna be task not found for task ID. So I'm gonna do task card not okay, task card not found for, then I will do task ID, and then the ID of the task. So I'm just gonna bring a comma, and the ID of the task is just gonna be the current task ID. So this is actually going to display that the task is not found, or the task card is not found, the task with ID like this. And after we have done this, we go ahead and then show our modal over here. So I think this is pretty much it, and this should actually fix our problem. We can go here, refresh the page like this. Okay, so now this task doesn't have a card. But first of all, let's go ahead and then do for the ones that we know were already working. So I'm gonna come here and then click on this and give it a proper description, something readable. This is a new description, and then the title, I'll do video and audio to see. All right, so this one was working actually, so we should click and everything should work fine. And this one works just fine. But for the one that didn't work and we have actually worked on it, I'm just gonna click on this and then give a new description. I'm gonna do new description goes here, and hopefully we shouldn't have errors, and it should also create the description div and everything for us. So I'm gonna hit on that, and we are having an error. So let's check what the error is. It's telling us TypeError can't access at classless dot cardbody dot classless. Okay, so let's inspect our code. Okay, straight away I can see where the error is coming from. Cardbody dot class. This shouldn't be capital C, so it's gonna be small c, and the same thing applies to the description element over here. So let's save changes, and I need to refresh the page one more time. Okay, and let me go back into the backend and then clear this. Let me see another task. So another task. Let me clear it and then save changes. Come back here, refresh so that this element is not even created at all. Okay, so I'm gonna clear this one. Click on it again, and we need to add a new description. This is it. Okay. This is a new description like this, and then save changes, and this is a new description. So even though the div didn't exist, but because we actually created it manually, because there was a data coming from the update, the response was having a data, and once it is created, you see description is over here. Once you have the description coming back and the element didn't exist, we actually went ahead and then created, because here it didn't exist, but then the data has a description. And once it had a description, we went ahead and then created a div, added a class to that particular div. We also went ahead and then created the paragraph and gave it the class of the description. So this class was what the system was in need of or looking out for to update the description. And it had it and updated it, and it actually appended it to the card body and went ahead and appended it to the task card. So we have done a very good job. All right, guys, so this is it. Everything worked perfectly. We have been able to resolve that particular issue. And without wasting much time, let's end the video here, and I'm just gonna see you in the next one. Bye-bye. All right, guys, welcome back. So remember how we are able to click on any of these tags and then show up a modal. That modal already has the tags details pre-populated. But then what happens when we create a task on the Kanban board that is dynamically added to the board? So let's say this is a new task. Okay, now this task is actually added to the board without we having to refresh the page. Now, when I click on this particular task, the edit icon is not going to open up anything. And that's because a task that is added dynamically onto the dashboard or the Kanban board actually doesn't have event listeners attached to it. But now when I refresh and then click on it, it's now opening the task for us. And the reason is when we refresh, Django actually re-rendered everything and it attached event listeners to it. We don't really want to refresh before we'll be able to open up the model. And to fix that, we need to use something called event delegation. So when we talk about event delegation, it's actually we adding an event listener to a parent container. So in this case, we are going to be added an event listener to the entire board, starting from here. Everything inside of this place, we add event listeners to it. Then we can listen for clicks on the board. And when we realize that the click is on the pencil icon, we can now trigger or attach an event listener to the pencil icon and then open up the modal. That is essentially going to fix our problem for us. So I'm just going to go into the code, and the first thing we want to do, I have opened the Kanban board. Let me close some of these things. We don't need them. And on the Kanban board, this is actually going to be our parent container. It is the board itself. So when I close it, you realize that I have actually closed everything. So this is the board itself. And here I want to attach or add an ID. So I'm just going to do ID, and that is going to be equal to board dash container like this. So this way we will be able to target or get this particular board. So after I have done that, I'm just going to copy it, and then I'm going to come back to where we open the modal. So I'm going to scroll down to where we are opening the modal. So we have opening modal over here. Now we're attaching a click event to all the pencil icons, and that's something that we are not going to do any longer. So first thing first, I'm just going to scroll to where we are making the API calls, the fetch, and I'm just going to cut everything from this particular one. So I'm going to scroll down to where we do the call, and I'll cut it like this. Then I'm going to come down here and then create a function for that. Open modal like this. Okay, so I'm just going to do function, and this function, I'm just going to call it open task modal like this. It's very descriptive, and it's actually going to be getting a task or task ID. It's going to be expecting task ID. So I can just do current task ID or maybe task ID like that. And I'm just going to open the bracket like this. Okay, so inside this, I'm just going to paste our code over here. So this essentially does the same thing, but this time around, it's just going to be a function, and it's not going to be triggered until we call it. So this is what we are doing over here. So we have the current task ID being passed, and now it's a function. All right, so after that, I really don't need this pencil icon, and I'm not going to be looping through. So I'm just going to delete every single code over here. All right, so now when we save and refresh, it's not going to work. You will not be able to open the modal, plus we will not also be able to pre-populate it. All right, but this is the good thing. All right, guys, so now we need to target the Kanban board. So I'm just going to make a comment and say event delegation to handle, let's do handle clicks on the pencil icon. Okay, so this is very descriptive, and now we need to target the board, and the way we are going to target the board is just going to be const, and we say I'm just going to give it a name that Kanban board like that. And this Kanban board is just going to be equal to say document dot get element by ID, and now we need to find the ID that we gave to that particular board. So when you come here, we said board dash container. So I'm just going to select that, scroll down to where we are using it, and that's somewhere here. Okay, so we need to give it like this, and then I'm just going to put the board over like the ID over here. So this is actually going to select or get the board for us. So now when it gets the board, we need to add the event listener to the board itself. So I'm just going to do board Kanban board dot, and we're gonna add event listener like this. All right, so the event listener you want to add is just going to be the click. So I'm going to do click like this. It's not clicks, but click. All right, then we can now run this function, and this function is just going to be expecting an event like this. And then from there, we can now check to see if the icon that is clicked is the pencil icon. So I'm just going to make an if condition. So we say if, and then we pass event dot, and the target, if the target dot closest is the pencil icon. Okay, so if it is the pencil icon that is clicked, so we already know the icon, or we already know the class for the pencil icon is dot fa dash pen like this. So if that is what is being clicked, then this is what we want to do. We want to find the parent, or we want to find the task card. So we do const, and we say task card, because a pencil icon has been clicked. So let me bring you even back to the page. Now we are listing for clicks. I clicked here, and that is not a pencil icon. But when I click on a pencil icon like this, then it means that a pencil icon has been clicked. So if a pencil icon has been clicked, this pencil icon is in a task card. We have a div over here. So we need to find that particular div. And the way we are going to find that particular div, we have to target it. So it's just going to be event dot closest and event dot target dot closest, and we are going to find the task card. So an element with a class called task card. So we're going to have dot task dash card over. All right, so after we have found the task card, the next thing we want to do is to define another variable. So you say const, and I'm just going to call it task ID like this. And this task ID is just going to be this task card. And we want to find the attribute, or get the attribute like this, attribute. And the attribute we want to get is just going to be what we have specified over here. So I'm just going to scroll to where we have some of the task card, and we have data task ID. So we are just getting it like this. Come back, and then I'm just going to paste it. So I'm just going to look for it somewhere here, and then paste it over there. So it's just going to be the attribute you're looking for. And after we have also gotten this, we now want to open our modal. So we're going to do open modal here. So the modal that we want to open is just going to be this function. So I'm just going to copy this function with the parameter over here. So we call the function over here, paste it like this, but then we don't have current tax over here. What we have is the tax ID. So I'm going to copy the tax ID and then paste it or pass it to this one. So when we get a tax ID, which has been gotten from the attributes over here, it's just going to be passed to this particular function. And then the function is also going to pass it to the fetch API, and it's going to fetch it, and everything should work fine. So let me save changes, come back to our board, and I'm just going to refresh the page. We are supposed to make a new entry or tax, but before that, we knew that these things are supposed to work. So let me click, and it's not working. So let me inspect the element over here. All right, so when we clicked on it, it's actually giving us an error. It's saying syntax error, mixing equal to in const. So let's scroll down to where we were actually doing that. So we say const tax ID, and we are supposed to bring an equal to over here. So I'm just going to save it, go back, and then refresh the page. And then I'm just going to clear everything over here. And we know that these ones, once it has been refreshed, Django has attached the event listener. So let's click, and we are also having another error. Say task card attribute is not a function. Oh, so attribute is spelled wrong. We have brought a T over here. So I'm just going to clear that, save it, go back, and then we're going to refresh our page one more time. delete this one, and now we know it's supposed to work, and now it is actually working. But previously, the newly created tags that are actually displayed on the Kanban board dynamically does not have the ability to be clicked and open. So it didn't have the click event. So let's say this is another new task like this, and now it is being created. But we know that previously when you click on this, it doesn't open. So let's click, and now it opens, and we can just go ahead and then update it. So now task created will have event listeners attached to it, because we are actually looking for the click event on the board itself. And once it is the pencil icon that is clicked, we then assign a click event to it, and we are able to open it. So this one is not refreshed, it's actually working. We can create another one, something like this, and then click, and it's still working. All right, guys, so we are now sending the tax. We have defined the tax ID, and we are now passing the tax ID over here. But then when it comes to the update tax model, we actually passing current tax, and that current tax is passed over here. We're going to run into an issue where the current tax is just going to be null, because it's null over here. So the way we are going to solve that is to do current tax ID is just going to be equal to, and then we're going to change this one to tax ID. So I'm going to do task ID, pass tax ID over here, and then I'm just going to also put it up. Okay, so when we do that, this tax ID, which is actually having the data, which is being passed to the open tax modal from this part, is just going to be set to current tax. And once it is set to current tax, you can now use current tax over here, and we're not going to have any issue. So that was a mistake that I made, and I just want to change it. Okay, so now we can just go back onto our page, because I ran into this error where it says the tax ID is null, and that's because we have defined it null over here without setting it at this particular place. So I'm gonna come to this part, refresh, and I'm just gonna clear this part, click on this part, and then I'm just gonna add a description, something like this is a new description like that. And I'm just gonna set the start date and then the end date also over here, and I'm gonna click on this, and now everything is working. So that was a mistake I did, and I have now corrected it. Bye bye. All right, guys, welcome back. So now we are on our dashboard, and on the dashboard we are seeing the latest project. This latest project, for instance, this particular project, create a mockup, product mockup, is a project that I did not create it myself, and then the team that is assigned to this one, I'm not also a member of this particular team. So how come I'm part, or it's actually displaying on my dashboard? And that's because with our current setup, it is actually displaying all the project that we have, and it's actually paginating it. And this project, I'm not the one that created it, and also I'm not also part of the team. So just to confirm that, I'm just gonna go into the team members first and go to graphic designers. So I'm Gentech and I'm not part. So if you look at it, the one in yellow are those that are being added to that particular team. Gentech is not part. Okay, so I'm also gonna go into the project itself. So I'm gonna click on project, and this is that particular project we are talking about. And if you take a look, the owner is Haida. So when you click, it's actually Haida. I'm also not part of the team, and I'm not the owner, but it's still displaying on my board. So it's actually showing create a product markup, and it's also going to be due in 2 days. So it's also over here. So this is something that we have to fix, and it's because of our current setup. And the way we are going to fix it is inside the project models. We're gonna go into where we have our query set. So I'm just gonna create another function, and here I'm just gonna call it, okay, let me make a comment over here and say user and team on project. So what I wanna do is only display project that I am the owner, that is created by the logged in user, or a project that the logged in user is part of the team that is being assigned to it. So the comment, I'm just gonna do user and team on, let me say, on project. projects like this. These are the only projects that I want to display. So I'm just going to define a function, and the name is for user. That's how I'm just going to call it. And first, it's just going to take self as an argument, and it's also going to take the user. That is going to be the logged in user. All right, so at this point, what we want to return is just going to be equal to self.filter. And what we're going to be filtering by is just going to be, first, we want to combine two query sets. So the first one is just going to be the users project, and that I'm just going to rely on modals.queue. So you can also import queue, but then I'm just going to do modals.queue. And what we're going to do is we want to just check to see if the owner is equal to the user that we have passed over here. So this user should be equal to the owner. If that is the case, then we are returning that particular project. And then we also want to use a pipe over here that is like or, and we also want to do modals.queue. So let me bring even a space over here, modals.queue like this. And then we also want to check to see if the team member is equal to the user or the user is part of the team. So I'm just going to do team underscore, and I'm just going to do members like this is equal to user. So if that is the case, we can return it. But because you are combining two different query sets, there is a likelihood that we are going to get duplicates. So I'm just going to use .distinct like this, and that is just going to remove the duplicate like that. So now that we have done this, we can now add this one to our project manager. So I'm going to come here and then define, sorry about that. I'm just going to come here and then define another function. So this function, I'm just going to give it the same name as before, and I'm just going to do def for user, let's say for underscore user like this. And this time around, we also need to pass self like that as the first argument. And then the next one is just going to be the user like that. So after we have done that, we want to return. So that is going to be return. And what we want to return is self dot. And we want to get a query set like this. Query set. So self dot get query set. So that is going to bring us the query set over here, or the query set. And from there, we want to that. And after we have had a query set, we are going to get the active one over here. So first is the active. We want to get the active because we want to get all active projects, not a project that has been marked as inactive. And after that, we also want to get the upcoming. So the upcoming projects are the projects that are in the future. We don't want to get project that the due date has passed. And finally, we want to get dot for user. And now we need to pass the user to it. So this is the user that has been passed, and we will need to pass the user over here. So this is essentially what we want to return. After we have defined this, I can just copy it, and then we're going to go onto our dashboard. On the dashboard, we're going to go to where we have latest project. So I'm going to scroll to latest project. Where is it? So instead of doing latest project.or, you're going to do latest project.for user. And so latest project.objects dot, and we're going to do for user. So I'm just going to do that for underscore user like this. And now we need to pass the user. So here we don't have access to the user, but we have access to the request. So access to the request. So I'm just going to do request.user over here, request.user like that. That is going to give us the logged in user. So request.user. That is perfect. So now that we have done this, I'm just going to save changes. Oh, sorry, I did it on the latest members. That's not what we want to do. So let me copy out. Let me copy this one and then undo it like this. And I'm just going to do it on the project. So latest project and latest project.objects.for user, and we pass in request.user. Perfect. So I'm just going to save changes and then save changes for the models over here. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to go onto the dashboard and then refresh. When I refresh, this project should be gone. So, and the total number of projects should also be gone as well, should be reduced. So now that project has been taken out from our dashboard and the total number of projects has been reduced from 3 to 4 because one, I'm not the owner of the project and I'm also not part of the team that is assigned to that particular project. All right, so at this point, we also will have the same issue when we visit view all project. So when I click on view all project, it's still there. So we need to go there and then exclude it. So I'm gonna go to project and then views. Scroll to project list view. So project list view. And now to be able to do that or remove it, we need to overwrite one more function. So the function that we want to overwrite is get query set. So we do def, and I'm just gonna override the get query set method. Get query set, this one right here. All right. So what we have to do is we actually be passing self, and what we're gonna be returning. I just want to get rid of this particular part, and then I'm gonna do project, not project form, but project.objects, and here we do dot for user. So I'm gonna do dot for underscore user like this. And now we need to pass in the request, but we don't have the request over here. So we do self dot request. So that is going to give us access to request over here, request dot user. So this actually is going to give us the logged in user over here. Perfect. And I also have to remove the double def over there. All right. So this is actually going to solve our problem. Let me save changes and revisit that same page over here. Now we are seeing create project mockup. So I'm going to refresh it and now it is gone. It is no longer over here. All right. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and one other place that we are also going to face that particular problem is going to be on the project that are nearing the due date. So when I click on it, we are still seeing it over here. And the way we are going to solve it is to copy this particular part or the function, and I'm going to scroll to the project near due date. And already we have actually defined that function, or we have actually overridden that particular function. But instead of doing dot or, I'm just going to do dot for underscore user over here. And this user is just going to request get, and this function is going to require self or the logged in user. So self dot request dot user. So we now pass in the logged in user, and it's going to check to see if the logged in user is the one that created the project or is the one that actually or belongs to a team that is assigned to the project. And after it has done all this filtering, it will also filter to see if it is due in either 2 days or more. If it is not due in 2 days, regardless, it's just gonna remove it from the query set. So I'm just gonna save it, come back to our page. We see it over here, but when I refresh, let's wait, and it is gone. So this actually solves our problem. We can now only see projects that have been assigned to us or projects that we created ourselves. So guys, I'm just gonna see you in the next video, but don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for me. So now we want to have the ability to delete a project. So to implement the delete, first of all, I'm just gonna go to view all projects, and when I click on that, you're seeing that we have create Swift app and some of the projects over here, and we have 2 buttons. So the first one is the edit and then the delete. Now let's work on the delete. So when I click on this delete button, it's not going to do anything as of now. And that's because we have actually not implemented that functionality. So we have to implement it in our backend. So I'm just going to close the modal, and I'm also going to close the account views, and I want to create that particular delete somewhere here. Okay, so we have to define a class, and that class is just going to be a class-based view, and I'm just going to call it project delete view like this. So capital V like this, and this is actually going to be inheriting the delete view. Okay, so this delete view, I now have to import it. So I'm just gonna import it, but for now, let me do pass so that we don't have errors. So I'm going to scroll to the top, and here we can do delete view like this. Okay, so this same delete view is what we have inherited over here, this particular part. Okay, so at this point, what we want to do is very simple. We first of all want to get the model that we want to query from, which in this case is just going to be the project model. So it's a model, and it's going to be equal to project like this. Okay, so now we have the model. Let me give ourselves some space to work with. Okay, so now we have the model, and this, we also need to get a template underscore name. That is the template we are going to confirm the delete on, and it's just going to be a URL like this. So I have not created a template yet, but then it's just going to be projects / and I'm going to call it confirm underscore delete like this, delete dot html. So it doesn't exist. It does not exist. So let me go ahead and then create it over here. So I'm gonna come to projects and templates, and inside the project over here, I'm just gonna create that particular file and call it confirm. Let me paste the name, just not make a mistake. .html like this. Okay, so now the template exists, and we are going to add some few details to it very soon. And when we are done with that, we also want to actually get a success URL. When a deletion is successful, we want to redirect the user to a particular page. So I'm going to do success underscore URL, and that is just going to be on the project list page. So after we have deleted the project, we want to redirect to the project list page. So I'm just going to do reverse underscore lazy, and here we have to show where we want to redirect to. So that is just going to be on projects. Let's open the project URL. So we have project list. So I'm just going to copy the name of the view that we want to redirect to. But when we go into the Swift tab itself, so Swift tab, the main project URLs, we have projects over here. That's the name. So we do projects : project. So we do projects : and then the list that I copied. So that is where we want to redirect to. Now let's add some few details or add a code to the confirm delete. So inside the confirm delete, what we want to do is very simple. We want to extend the base.html. So I'm going to do extends, and that is just going to be base.html like this, base.html. And now I'm just going to break a block content. So I'm going to do block, and we say content like this. So let me remove the ending content here. And after I have removed it, inside the block content, I want to add some few details. So the first thing I want to add is just going to be h2 element over here. And I just want to say confirm deletion. So I'm going to do a deletion like this. And then the next one, I want to add a paragraph. So this paragraph is just going to tell them to something that they can read. So it's just going to be another element p, and what we want to say, are you sure you want to delete this project? Are you sure you want to delete? Okay, delete the project. And now I want them to also see the name of the project, but then I'm just going to put it in a double quote like this. And the name of the project, I can just use a curly bracket like this, and then I'm going to do project name like this. So that is actually going to give us the name of the project. And I also want to put a question mark. It's just a question for them to confirm. So we need to be able to submit this particular form. It's going to be a post request, and the post request, we have to have a form. So I'm just going to do form, and this form is not going to have action. I'm just going to take that one out. But what it's surely going to have is just going to be a method, and the method I want to give this thing is just going to be a post method. So inside the form, just to satisfy Django security, I just want to make sure that the CSRF token is actually added as RF token. So now we are adding the CSRF token. And now I also want to have two buttons. So the first one is just going to be an actual button. So this button is just going to be of the type, it's just going to be submit. So I'm going to do submit like this. And from there, we also want to style it. So I'm going to give a class. Sorry about that class. And this class is just going to be, we want to say btn and btn dash danger like this. That is it. And the text we want to display is just going to be delete. Okay, so we want it to be bold enough for the person to see that this is a confirmation that they really want to delete and they cannot come back from that. All right, so the next button is just going to be an href to redirect us back to the post detail page. Sorry, the project detail page if they don't want to delete it. So, or the project list page. We will choose project list. So I'm just going to do an anchor like this, and the URL is just going to be project-list. So it's the same as how we were actually trying to redirect to. So I'm going to copy this, come back to the confirm delete, and I'm going to use URL. And inside the URL, I'm just going to put project list over here. And we also want to give it a class, something that matches with the button that we have used above. So we're going to do class, and then the class is just going to be, equal to, so it's just going to be btn, then btn dash, and we're going to give it secondary like this. And the name is just going to be cancel, so cancel like this. So I think this is pretty much it, and everything should work. But now we need to hook our app. So now we need to actually hook this view to our URL. So I'm just going to copy one of these and then paste it over here. And then the name is just going to be project delete. So let me do, okay, so first we need to import it. So project delete view, and I'm just going to come and then paste it over here. So from there, we need to also add it over here. And after we have done that, you're going to give project dash delete. Okay, delete like that. And we also want to do /. So this one is going to be /, and we're going to add a delete. So delete like this, and we bring our /. So I think this should actually solve our problem. Let me even remove this particular part, project. Let me make it delete like that, but you can make it project delete. And then a couple of things I want to add. This is enough to actually make us delete a project, but we also want to add the details of the get context data, because when we visit the delete page, you are supposed to see the images over here, the notification and all that, even the project title and all that. And I just want to copy this particular one and then paste it over here like that. And I have to indent it a bit back, and that is all. So the title is not going to be project due, but it's just going to be project delete or delete project, anything delete project. Just we can even choose to add a name of that particular project because we can get it from there. So let me save it, and I'm gonna save it for all. Okay, so after that, let me check to see if my server is running. So I'm gonna come and then check, and then the server is really running. So I'm gonna refresh the page, and now you are seeing project delete, but still we have not hooked this particular thing up. So what we have to do is to go back to our project detail page. So sorry, project list page. I'm going to scroll to that particular page, and it says project list. So we're going to look for, let me check the name, and it says delete. So let's search for delete. Delete. All right, so now we have it over here. It's an anchor, but we also need to add the href. So I'm just going to do href like this. So this href is going to be equal to, so let's add it. And now we want to assign the URL. So the URL is just going to be project column, and we give it the name of delete. So I'm going to go into the URL and then pick this particular delete over here and then paste it over here. Perfect. So this should actually work, but then we also need to pass the PK or the ID of the project that we want to delete. And that is just going to be project.pk like that. This is going to be the parameter that is being passed to the URL. So another thing that I want to do is to also confirm or make sure that only project owners can see this particular delete button on the page. So if you're a project team member, if you're assigned to work on the project, but you are not the one that actually created the project, you're not going to have the ability to delete it. You're not going to see the delete button. And to do that, I'm going to make this if condition. I'm going to say if, and now the condition that I want to do or check is just going to be request if requests dot user is equal to project.owner. So if these two are the same, that is when we are going to render this particular anchor tag. So I'm just going to save it, come back here, and then I'm just going to refresh the page like this. And now we are seeing that these projects I'm actually assigned to it and I'm not the owner. So we can confirm create Swift Hub logo. Let's go back into project and look for create Swift Hub logo. And you can see right away that the owner is Hyder and I'm not the owner. So once I'm not the owner, I'm not going to see the delete button over here. It's hidden. But create bsims frontend. Let's go back and then check. Create backend for bsims. Let me confirm. Create bsims frontend. We are talking about bsims front end. So I'm going to scroll down, come here, and straight away you see that it's for Gentech. And that's why I still see the delete button. So now when we click on this, I'm just going to click. Okay, so now we are getting an error. Let's read. Object must be an instance of sub type of type. All right, so let's go back, and we are having this error because I actually copied the get context data without making any modification. So this one has project near due date list view, and we are dealing with delete view, but then we are doing or getting the super of this particular one. That is where we have the error. And that is why mostly I hate copy and paste and I want to do everything from scratch. But let me copy it and then paste it over here. Okay, so now we can save it and I'll go back and refresh the page. So when I refresh, we are now seeing confirm deletion. And are you sure you want to delete this project? And it actually gets the name of the project for us. So if I don't want to delete it, I can just click on cancel and it brings us back to the page. So we did that one over here. So let me scroll down. When you click on the cancel is actually going to get us back to the project list. But if I want to really delete it, I can click on that and come to delete. And when I do this, this action is just going to be not reversible. So I'm just going to click on that. And now looks like the project is not deleted. So oh, it's actually deleted. It was create backend for bsims and it's actually deleted. So now we have two more projects. I can also click on this particular one because I have access. It says create Swift Hub and I'm going to confirm that. And now it is gone. So this is how we implement the delete view. But in the next video, we are actually going to check to see if the owner is the same as the logged in user, not on the front end, but then on the back end, so that before the deletion actually happens, we just make a comparison to see. So I'm just going to see you there. Bye for now. All right, guys. So now this is the project list, but I want to adjust the total number of projects we display over here. And that is just going to be in the project list view. So when we go into the project, even the projects near due date is a project list view, actually a list view. So I just want to leave it at 5 so that we can display about 5 projects. And on the project list view paginated by, I'm just also going to leave it at 5. And I'm just going to save changes, go back to our board or the project list. And when we refresh, we are now even seeing more projects over here. All right, so now you're gonna realize that 2 of the projects I don't have a permission to delete. I'm only seeing them because I'm part of the team that are actually working on it. All right, so when you are working on a system, you wanna look for the loopholes in the system as much as possible because you cannot trust the users of a system. They would definitely want to have a loophole and then exploit it. So one of the ways I have found with our current setup is when it comes to deleting a project. So let's say I click on this. It actually forms the project URL over here. You're going to see that over here. All right, so it takes the the ID of the project / delete, and it wants us to delete that particular project. It's actually asking us to confirm the deletion. So that is create an admin dashboard. I want to come back here and then go to create backend for bsims, which I don't have permission to delete. And that's why you're not seeing the delete button over here. So I'm just going to go back into the project on the dashboard and create backend for bsims. And you're going to realize that the owner is Haida. So let me confirm again, backend for bsims. And then the owner of this particular project is Haida. So I do not have the permission to delete. But I want to click on that and then get the URL of the project over here. Copy it. I'm going to come back to the dashboard of the project list, and I'm just going to click on my project just to form the URL. So I just click on that. And now I'm just seeing the URL over here. And I'm going to replace this particular URL with the particular project ID with the one that I don't have the permission to delete. So I'm just going to paste it over here. Now I'm just going to click on, you see, create an admin dashboard. And now I'm just going to click on this. And now it's telling us to delete the project that is called create backend for bsims, which I don't have permission to delete because I'm not the owner of the particular project. But now I'm seeing it over here. And now I'm just going to click on delete to see whether it's going to delete or not. So when I click on delete, boom, it's gone. And when I come here to refresh on the page, it's now telling us this particular project does not exist. That's because it has been deleted. And that is something that we don't want to happen because the users will try as much as possible to find a loophole. So this is the problem we have to fix in this particular video. To fix that particular problem, we're going to have to come to the project delete, and let's see, it is here. And we want to override the post method. So I'm just going to do def post okay. So this is actually going to accept 4 arguments. We have the self, which is being passed. We want to pass the request as well. And we also want to pass the arguments, args like this. And we also want to pass the the keyword arguments like that. Okay. So now that we have passed these ones, we want to override the post method. So first is to check for a project. So we want to fetch that particular project and check the permission on that. So let me make a comment. Fetch or get projects and check permission. So we say check, wow, permissions. It's like I can't spell anything correct today. And I'm just going to do project. And this project is just going to be self.getObject. So you do self.getObject, and that is going to get us the project. So do getObject like this. So now the project is being stored over here. All right, so the next thing we want to check to see if the current user is equal to the owner. So we want to make check permissions like this, and what we can do is to say if and we say request dot user. So the request dot user is going to give us the logged in user. It's not equal to, so I'm just going to do not equal to, then we're going to do project dot owner like this. So if it is not equal to the project dot owner, that means the logged in user is not the one that created the project. And for that matter, we don't want to allow them to delete. So here we need to give them a message. So we say messages. So these messages has already been imported in one of our previous videos. So when you scroll up here, you have to import it from Django.contrib import messages. And now we are using the messages over here. So I'm going to scroll down and say messages dot warning. So we want to give them a warning message, and we need to pass in the request. So the request has been passed now, and we need to type in the actual message we want to display to them. So I'm just going to type that you do not have permission to delete this project. You do not have permission to delete this project. And once they have seen the project, it means that they are actually a team member or something like that. And the next one I want to add is to tell them you can only work on it, on the project, so on it. And after I have showed them that, I want to redirect them to the project detail page. So this time around, we're not going to redirect them to the project list. We only want them to be able to work on it. So I'm just going to return, sorry, and redirect. And we want to redirect them to the project detail page. So here I will do project. So here I'm just going to do projects colon, and let's see. So I'm gonna go, let me remove this, and then even the project list. So when we come here, the project detail page is always on the project dash detail. So colon, and I'm just gonna put the project detail over here. All right, so at this point, we also want to pass in the primary key of the project. So we wanna do a, and the PK is just gonna be project dot pk, like that. That is going to get us the project primary key. Okay, so from there we have actually checked if the user has a permission. But if the user, so we have checked to see if the user is having the permission. If they are not having a permission, we give them this message. But what happens if the user has the permission? So that is something that we have to handle. So at that point, we will go ahead and then delete the project, and you're gonna get them or send message. So we say messages dot, and what we're gonna do is success, and we need to pass in the request like this. So we have the request passed over here, and I'm gonna use an F string to format this. So what I will do is first of all to say the project, and I want to give the name of the project. So I'll do project dot name. Okay, so from there, project dot name, and I'm just gonna do is deleted, is deleted successfully, like this, and that is going to end it over there. And then after that, I'm just gonna return. So I'm gonna do return. So I have to return something, return, and I'm just gonna return super and dot post. So that is where we actually do the actual deletion. So I'm just gonna pass in the request like this, and after I have passed in the request, I have to pass the args, and then the keyword args, like that. So I think this is enough for us to be able to check the permissions on this particular project. So when it is successful, it's actually going to be redirected to the project list page. Okay, so now we need to display the messages when we go onto the project detail page. So let's scroll to the project detail, and we need to add the messages over there. So we already have done that when we're dealing with the comments. So let me scroll down to where we should have it somewhere here. Okay, so we say displaying messages. All right, guys, so after we have done this, we need to also load this messages on the project list, because the project detail already has it. We have if and then end if over here. All right, so I can just go ahead and then copy the whole of this one. So when it fails, you are going to display the message over here. But then when it is successful, we have to go to the project list and scroll to where we are having the pagination. Okay, so the pagination is over here. So I just want to put the same thing over here for us to see. I'm just gonna save changes to it. So let me first go back. Let's refresh the page again. And now we are seeing the project. So I'm just going to click on delete over here. So it's going to show us this particular one. But before you even go ahead and delete, let me test this particular one first. So I'm going to go to create logo for bsims and check to see whether we will still have the permission to delete, like how we were able to delete for the first one. So I'm just going to go to projects and create, let me look at it again, create SwiftHub logo. Create SwiftHub logo. So I'm going to click on it, and then the owner is Hider. So I'm just going to click or get the ID over here. So I'm going to copy it, go back here, and now I'm just going to click on this one on a purpose, just so we can get the URL formed. So I click and we now have the URL, but I'm actually not going to delete that one. I'm just going to have a bad intention of deleting it and then push this particular one over here, hit on it, and now it says create SwiftHub logo. Okay, so now I want to click on delete and see whether it's going to be deleted or it's going to send us to the post detail page telling us to work on it and not delete it. So this, and now we see the message over here: you do not have the permission to delete this project, you can only work on it. And that's because we actually overrode that particular post request, that if the owner is not the same, they can only work on it. Perfect. So now everything is working. I'm just going to go back again, and go back. So I'm just going to refresh this one. I have the permission to delete it. I'm just going to hit on delete, and so for the deletion, I'm just going to click on delete, and boom, the project create this is deleted successfully. And when I come back into our project, we are not supposed to see it over here. That is how we can check the permissions. And in the upcoming videos, we are also going to work on how they cannot even form the URL. Suppose they get the URL, they get the project ID, it's just going to return 404 instead of allowing them to try to delete it. So that's something that we're going to be implementing very soon. But if you are finding this series very useful or helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just going to see you in the next video. Now we want to have the ability to edit projects. We have actually dealt with deleting a project, and we now want to move forward to editing a project. So that is what we want to do at this point. All right, so let me bring up my terminal, and then I'm going to go into the views over here. So I'm just going to close. Okay, so I don't need to close any of them now. So this is the project delete. But then on top of project delete, I want to create the project update view. So it's just going to be a class-based view. And the name I want to give to it is just going to be project. We have projects, update view like this. And it's just going to be inheriting from update view. So this is something that I have to import. Okay, so I'm gonna go up at this place and do comma, and you say update view like this. So now this update view is being inherited by the view that we are developing over here. All right, so at this point we need to have a model. So the model is just gonna be equal to our project model like that. Project like this. So after we have done this, we need to do form underscore class. So what form is going to be associated with this, and it's actually going to be equal to our project form. So this project form is something that we developed some time ago. So let me go to project form. That was what we used to create a project. So when we're doing the project create view, that is what we use, and we have now imported it over here. And now we need to give it a template name. So it's a template underscore name, and the name we want to give to it. For now, I'm going to be changing it very soon, but for now, I'm just going to go into projects and / projects underscore update.html. So this doesn't exist. I need to create it. So I'm going to come to template and projects. So I'm just going to click here and then do project underscore update.html like this. All right, so here I'm just gonna put something like a form. Or first of all, let me extend base.html. So base.html, and from there I also want to put this one into a block content. So I'm gonna do block, and inside the block content I'm gonna do content. I always want to remove the ending part over here because it's not necessary. And here I'm just gonna put a form over here. So we are getting this form because update view is just by default. Django is gonna pass a form as a context to the front end. So I'm just gonna do form like this. This is actually gonna give us the form that we have passed at the back end over here. So with this, I think we are done. The next thing we want to do is to hook this one up inside of our URL. So I'm going to copy this particular name, close the form, and I'm just going to go into the urls.py, and I'm just going to leave it over here. In fact, project update view is going to have the same, almost the same URL as the delete. So I'm just going to do this, and after I have pasted, I'm going to change this part to update or edit. Any of them will do, and then I'm just going to do update like that. Okay, so I need to also change the name. That is going to be project update view. So I'm just going to do project update view like this. So let's save changes. And then the next thing we want to do is to hook this URL up. So I'm going to go to the project list view, and at the project list view where we are doing the if condition, we also want to hide the edit button if the logged in user is not the owner. So I'm just going to paste it. That means wrapping it around the edit button. That at this point is just going to hide this particular button from unauthorized users. So I'm just going to do href like this, and this href is just going to have the URL. So we do URL, we do URL like this, and this particular URL is just going to be on projects colon, and we did update. So let me reconfirm that is update. So let's put update over here. So input update over here, and the next thing we want to do is to pass the primary key of the ID of the project, and that is going to be project.pk or ID like that. Let me save changes. I think we are good to go. So let me refresh. And now we are not seeing edits button here because this project, I'm not an owner. But then when I click on edits, it's just going to say template does not exist. So let me check. But it's not coming from the template of the update view. It's just on the base. We said base and we brought C over here. So I'm just going to go into our template, and this extra T is not needed. I'm just going to save changes, come back here, and I'm just going to refresh the page. And this is what you have. So because we are using an update view, automatically it actually populates everything. The data we have it's actually populating everything. We don't have to do any extra work. But we need a way to submit this data. And to do that, I have to wrap this particular form inside of a form actually. So you do form, and this form is just going to have an action that is going to be the URL where the update is going to take place, and it's going to be happening on the same update view. So I'm going to put dot over here, and we also need to pass a method. So the method is just gonna be a post method. This is not a get, it's a post. So let me put post lowercase like this, and within the form I want to put the form over here. Okay, so now we need a button to submit this data. So I'm just gonna do an input, and the type is just gonna be submit like this. Okay, so we also want to give it a class, or so let's say class, and the class we want to give to this thing, the class we want to give is just going to be btn. We want to style it like a button, and we have btn dash success like this. And after that, we also want to give it a value. So the value is gonna be equal to, so I just want to do something like save changes. So save changes like this. Okay, so let's save this and see what happens. So I'm gonna go back, come here, and then I'm gonna refresh the page like this. Now we are seeing this particular button. In fact, I'm not gonna leave it like this. I only want to test it and see. I'm just gonna replace this whole thing. So we have create Swift tab and the theme is this. Okay. So for this thing, I just want to change from create to maybe develop like this. So after I have changed this particular thing, I want to click on save changes. But before I do that, let's go back to our views and check if we have a success URL. So there is no success URL. So that means we wouldn't have a place to redirect to. All right, so and to fix that, I'm just gonna copy this, and then I'm just gonna paste the success URL. I'm actually gonna be doing some few changes to the success URL, but for now, I'm just gonna leave it as this. Save changes, and when we come back, let me even check to see if my server is running. Everything is running, and it was actually developed. Let me add some few details like this. And now I just want to click on save changes, and we are seeing forbidden. That's because we forgot to add a CSRF token. So I'm gonna come to this part and do CSRF token, save changes, and now this token should exist. I'm gonna do this and then, okay, so let me go back and then refresh the page like this. And instead of create, I'm just gonna do develop a backend. Let me add some few details like this. Come back and click on save changes. Now these changes have been effected. KSKA backend. So that means the changes have been effected. That is project number 2. I can even come back here and just take it out. Develop a backend. Okay, let me put a and then go back and then let me add fast API to this place. Fast. Oh, that's not how to spell fast API. Fast API like this. And I'm just gonna click on save changes, and now it actually saved the changes to this particular one. So if you go back to edit again, you're going to see that fast API has been reflected. And when we even refresh the page, come back to this, and you're seeing fast API is also here. All right, guys, so this is how we can create a backend functionality or a class-based view that can actually help us update a project. So I'm just going to see you in the next video. All right, guys, welcome back. So this is where we left things off, but you're going to realize that this page doesn't look pretty. So with our project create, how we're actually adding a project, let me click on that, and this is how it looks like. It really looks nice. This is our template of adding a project. It looks like this, and that is what we did in some of our videos, some of the past videos. And if you go to the project itself, project-edit, that could be found in the template. You're going to also realize that we have the project edit. It's just the same, just that we have these files. I'm not going to bother myself with these files, but these things are the same as this. So we want to go back into the project create, and I'm just gonna copy everything over here and then come to the project updates and paste it over here. So I'm gonna save changes, and I think everything should work just fine. So I'm just gonna go back to the project edit and then refresh the page. So when I refresh, this is what you have. Everything has been pre-populated. And let's try to edit this. So you're gonna do, instead of create, you're gonna do develop. So so it's develop actually. I'm gonna do create, and let me bring something over here. And I'm gonna scroll down, go to where it says create new project. I just want to test to see if it will work. If it works, we actually gonna edit, change the button over here. So I'm gonna click on create, and let's see what happens. And it did it. So it's actually creating it over here. So it's actually updating it. That's what to say. I'm gonna click on it one more time. Oh, sorry. I'm just gonna go edit again, and where we have the project completion, it is on to do. That's why we are not seeing anything here. So I'm just gonna click and then change it from to do to completed, and click on save changes, and now it comes completed. That is telling us that it is actually working. Okay, so one thing I want you to observe is that if I copied, once I copied from the project create view, and it's actually coming here, we are pasting everything over here and it works, then I could actually use the same template for both. So instead of project create underscore updates, and we having a different one over here, and we have, where is it? For the create, we have project underscore create. So I can just copy this and then replace it with this particular one where it says project update. So let me see project update, so that it all share the same template. All right. So now when I do this, somebody reading this code is just going to get confused because I'm doing projects create, meanwhile it's update. So I'm just going to go, first of all, delete this project updates templates. It's not going to be needed anymore. And after it has been deleted, I'm going to go into the project create, and I'm just going to make the name very descriptive. So I'm just going to do project create and updates. So let me do something like this, underscore and underscore, let's say update, sorry, update.html. And I'm just going to make sure that I copy the same name. So let me do the edit again and copy the same name. I'm going to have to come to where we are doing projects create for the updates, and then replace it with a new template name. I'm going to also scroll to where we have the project create, because if I should access that particular URL, it's not going to exist anymore. So I do this, and I'm just going to save changes. All right, guys. So at this point, we want to check to see, once you have actually changed the name and they are all using the same URL, sorry, the same template, we want to refresh those pages. For the edits, we want to click and then see if it is working. Everything is working, but then here the issue is it says create new project, and that is coming from the template. We also gonna visit the add project, and we have the same thing, everything is working. But the issue has to do with this particular one. And the way we are going to fix it is, first of all, I'm just going to go into create project create view, and I just want to copy this title context, and I'm just going to paste it down here. And here I'm just going to do button. So that's going to be button underscore text, like this. And this button underscore text is the name we want to show on the text. So when we come into the project create view, it's just going to be create new project. So I'm just going to paste that one over here. Paste it over here. And I'm just going to copy everything for the context data, because when you even come into the edit project, let me go to edit project. So edit, you're now going to realize that we don't have the notification working, and the text over here, the title, is also not there. There was something also here, but when you go to project add, we have the notification working. We have project add and project add over here, and that's because it doesn't have the context. So let me go back to where we have the project update view, and I'm just going to push this one a bit and then paste this one over here. Couple of things we need to change. Project updates, I'm just going to replace it with project create view, and from there we also want to make sure that we have a different text for the button. So I'm just going to go to the template and edit, scroll down, it says save changes. So we want to edit this text over here and then say save changes. So when we visit the page for edit, it's supposed to show save changes, but when you go to project updates, sorry, the new create project is just going to show something like it's just going to show the create new project. Also, the text at the top here says project edit. We have to change it here to edit, like this, edit. And even here, we also have to change this one to edit, like that. So I'm just going to go save changes, And one more thing, we need to add a button text to our template. So I'm going to scroll to the value, and here we're going to access the context variable. So I'm going to wrap this one in the double curly bracket like this, and then paste this one over here. Don't forget to save changes. And when we come to this part, I'm just going to refresh. It says create, so it should still be there. It says create, but then when we visit the edit page, click on edit, and now we are seeing save changes, and we can go ahead and modify everything we have over here. All right, guys, so if you are finding this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just going to see you in the next video. All right, guys, welcome back. So when it comes to editing of the project, we actually don't want people to even have access to the page, so that they can actually click on edit and it takes them back to the page. For instance, let's click on edit over here, but then let's take a look at the project that I don't have the permission to delete. We have create Swift app logo. So I'm gonna click on this, and now I'm just gonna go into the projects and go to create Swift app logo, which I don't have permission because I'm not the owner. All right, so let's do like how we did for the delete, but this one is just gonna be smarter. So I'm just gonna go here and then put this one in the URL /update like this. Okay, and then click on edit. Okay, so now it gives me this particular project, and trust me, I will be able to edit it if I, let me put 3.3 here, go to save changes, and it is being updated. We are now seeing 3.3. Ideally, I'm not supposed to be able to edit it. So we want to create our application in such a way that we wouldn't have the permission to do that. So let me go back to the page, refresh it. We'll be coming back to this page very soon to work on that. All right. So the way we are going to solve that particular project, issue is just going to have to be in how we are going to get our object. So let me overwrite one method over here for the update view. So in update view, you can have a method called get object. And if you want to overwrite it to your liking, you can do that. So I'm going to do def, and that is just get underscore object like this. So sorry, get object like this. So in this get object, I'm just going to pass off as an argument, and then the query set is just going to be set to, I don't want this query set. I'm just going to set the query set to none for now. All right. So after I have set the query set to none, the thing that I want to do is to get the project. So let me have a little bit of a plan over here. Get project, and this project is just going to be project is equal to, and we want to get a project. So we say get object of 404, which is not imported yet. I'm going to come to the top, and that is going to be under shortcut. So I'm going to do get object of 4 for this guy over here, and I'm just going to copy it, come to where we are trying to use it, and I'm just going to put get object of 404. All right, so this is actually going to take 2 arguments. So the first is just going to be model. So that is just going to be in the project, and we also want the pk, and the pk, the way we are going to access it is just going to be solve dot, and we're going to use the keyword ask, and now we're going to access the pk from it. So I'm just going to do pk like this. So this pk has been given to the get object of 404, and it's going to go into the project model or table and pass this pk to it and return that particular project for us. So now we want to check the permission on this. So let me make a comment and say check permission on this project. So we want to see if the current user has the permission to delete. So I'm going to do if, and we say project dot owner. So we want to be owner is not equal to, so we want to do solve dot request dot user. So we're going to do solve dot request dot user. So that is going to be the logged in user. So if this is not the case, then we want to raise 404. So raise 404. So instead of showing a message, we want to actually show them 404. So I need to import 404, and that is just gonna be at the top over here. Okay, so we're gonna do from Django dot, and I'm just gonna do http import, and we're gonna import http 404. So let me scroll down and use the http 404. So raise, and we're gonna raise http 404. So here we need to pass a couple of things. So first of all, it's just gonna be the message that we want to show to them. So let me bring this one and show them this message. I'm just gonna do project not found. So project not found, or you can even go crazy and tell them that this project does not belong to them and they cannot edit it, something along that line. And right after that, we're gonna return this project. So if the project actually, if this condition is satisfied, I mean, if the user is the owner, so we want to return the project. So return, so that we can use the project wherever we want to use it. So project like this. So this is actually going to prevent unauthorized users from getting access to this particular project, especially if they are not the owner, they cannot see the update page. After we have done this, we're going to scroll down and then modify some few methods. So the first method we want to modify is just going to be the form valid data. So I'm going to do def, and that is going to be form underscore valid like this. So we want to check to see if the form is valid. So we want to pass self as an argument, and we also want to pass the form itself. Okay, so this is perfect. So right after this, we want to actually save changes and then update the project and then show them a message. So first, let me show them a message like this, a success message. So we're gonna do messages dot, and we say success, and the message you want to pass is just gonna be self.request, self.request, because we need to pass the request, but we don't have access to request over here. So it's gonna be self.request, and then the message itself, that is gonna be project updated successful. So project updated. Oh, that's not how to spell updated successfully. All right, that is when it is successful. And now we're gonna do the actual update. And the way we do the update is just gonna be return, and we're gonna return super. That is the main method for the form data that, and we're gonna say form underscore valid. So valid like this, and it's just gonna take the form over here. So this essentially is just gonna update and then show a message for us. All right, so I'm gonna copy it one more time and then come down, and there's another method we want to override. So that is gonna be form underscore invalid. So invalid like this. And for the invalid, we also pass the self and then form, and we wanna show a message. But this time it's not gonna be a success, it's gonna be form.error. So do error like this, and we're gonna pass the self.request like we did earlier, and then we're gonna say please correct the errors below or something like that, or let's tell them that they do not have the permission or something along that line. So I'm just gonna do please correct the errors and try again. So that is a very nice message, and from there we want to return form dot invalid like that, not valid but invalid. That's why I mostly don't like copy and paste. And finally, the last method we want to override is just going to be def, and then the get success URL. So get underscore success URL. So this success URL, we want to actually return solve. Sorry, we want to pass solve over here. But the way I'm going to do is to override it. So I'm not going to return the super, but I'm just going to do reverse lazy like this. And instead of pointing to the project list like I did up there, I'm actually going to be pointing it to the projects column, and I'm just going to be going to project dash detail. So detail like this. And the next thing I want to pass is the primary key, because you're going to need a primary key to access that particular project. So we say keyword x, and the keyword x is just going to be a dictionary. So this dictionary is going to have a key called pk. So I'm going to do pk, that is the primary key, and then the value is just going to be self dot object. So we have object like this dot, and we're going to access the pk like that. So I think this pretty much solves our problem. This access URL is not going to be needed, so I'm just going to not even comment it out. I'm just going to remove it entirely, and then I'm just going to save changes. So after I have saved changes, I'm just going to come to this particular project, the one that I don't have access to it because it's for hider, and I'm not even supposed to see this particular page to begin with. I'm going to refresh, and now it's telling us page not found, and it actually exists, just that I don't have the permission to view it. All right, so it is actually solving our problem. Let me go to a project where I have access to and click on edit. And now I'm seeing this particular page, but that particular project that we don't have access, we cannot actually see it. Okay, so this looks pretty good. So with this same implementation, how we did it, and it's actually telling us to page not found because you do not have the permission. We want to do the same thing to the project delete view. The way we set the project delete view is actually going to let them see the button and even have the ability to click on it and all sort of things. So let me actually try to show you how that is also going to work. So I'm going to click on delete to form the URL. We go back to the projects for this particular one. We don't have access, it's for hider. And the same way we are not able to edit it, we also don't want to be able to even see the delete page. But for now, when I put it over here, /delete, I can actually go and then see the delete page. Except that when I try to delete it, it's not going to be deleted, telling me I don't have the permission. This is good. But again, we don't even want to see this page at all. And let's go back, because we have done that for the project update. It's just going to be easy to do for the project delete. So I'm going to come to where we are actually trying to delete the projects, copy everything over here for the get objects. And I'm just going to scroll to where we are deleting the project. So let me scroll down. I don't know where it is. So project delete, and let's override that one over here. So everything is going to look the same because it's the same project, and we are just not going to delete it. We are going to return 404. But when it comes to the post, I'm just going to comment everything out over here. I don't need anything over here because, in fact, it's the same information that is over here. This is what we are doing over here. So I'm just going to delete everything. It's actually going to make our work so much easy. So let me delete all this permission thing. I'm not even going to have access. I don't want to have access to this particular project because then it will not exist. Okay, so let me leave it like this because at this point it's going to exist, and we are passing the request and everything over here. So let me save changes, and this should actually prevent us from deleting unauthorized projects. All right, guys, so let me check if my server is running. The server is running. So at this point, I'm just going to refresh this page, and it should tell us page not found. So page not found. All right, guys, so I think we have actually implemented everything we want to do. So at this time, I think our project looks very robust. We have implemented a lot of functionalities, and this actually concludes part 7 of the series. In part 8 is just going to get so much exciting. So if you are finding this tutorial very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and I'm just going to see you in part 8. Bye bye for now.